What we do here is go back.
Hello there, everyone. How are we all? I am fucking alive. And at what price is what I ask you? What fucking price? About $5 a month, apparently. Oh, you didn't see the pig intro, so you don't know what time it is. Clearly, how could you possibly? Because I haven't told you. Christy can't be with us tonight. She had to back out, which is fine. But as you can see, the rollout. The rollout of the Monday time has gone very well. I'm very, very pleased with it overall. Seamless. I think we've done 1 in 5 that we could have done so far. Mostly because of me. Almost entirely because of me. But yeah. Not ideal. Not ideal. I'm looking at tasteful yiff. Well, that is information that I didn't need. But just because I didn't need it doesn't mean I didn't want it. But I also didn't want it, to be fair. So, you know. Is that meat cannon art? I don't know. Someone just sent me the thing and I thought it was hilarious. I have no idea where it's from. So yeah. Is she okay? I think she's okay, yeah.
Victory is ours!
I don't think she's like ill or anything. But yeah. Yeah, I think she's fine. If that was a subtle way of saying, is she dead? No, she's not dead. No. She contacted me and everything. It was fine. Yes. So I'm flying solo for tonight, which is a little bit annoying in the sense that Christy adds a lot to this stream that I can't provide. Like, you know, decency, tits, intelligence, being short. I can't provide any of these things. I apologise profusely for the lack of those things tonight. But we still have some stuff, you know. What is tasteful yiff? You know what? You should put that into a search engine and see what comes up. I don't know that look, it's not my job to educate you, yeah? Okay? I feel like you need to do some of the emotional labour yourself. And go and look at Tasteful Yiff. It's fine. You might find something out about yourself. You might learn something about you that you didn't know. It might open doors, avenues of exploration for you. Anyway. So, if you wanted to, you can look at Tasteful Yiff. And if you also wanted to, don't look up Tasteful Yiff at work. Don't do that at work. This is very much a private moment type thing. This is very much a between you and God situation, or you and the devil, whichever way you look at it. You can hit the follow button if you wanted to, in between jerking it to furry porn. You can hit the follow button. You can subscribe for as little or as much as $5 a month or something. On Twitches, you can do super chats via the Streamlabs link below. You can do bits messages, 200 bits or more. Hopefully we'll get you a text-to-speech. It does appear that the alert box thing is working again. Thank you, Twitch, for not being total shite all of the time. You can follow me on Discord. I've got Blue Sky, TikTok, I've got a PayPal, I've got Instagram, I've got Threads, that sort of thing. Those things. If you're on YouTube, hello YouTuberinos, how the devil are you all? Much love, welcome in, one and all. Just popped over from Navarra, how's tricks? Probably not as good as Navarra, so if I were you, I'd go back there, because you'll probably learn something on Navarra. It'll probably be entertaining and informational. Whereas on this channel, I'm not sure I can really provide either. Certainly not adequately. So, Tasteful Yiff makes Matt Walsh mad. That's true. And if for no other reason than to annoy Matt Walsh, you should look up Tasteful Yiff. You should. Oh, Navarra's over now. Oh, well, come on in then. From heaven into hell. From the frying pan into the fire. From tits to arse. I don't know why I made it that thing. You can come on in, Navarra people. Hello. How are we all? Yeah, if you're on YouTube, you can become a member for 99 pence. You can give memberships to the community, and you can do super chat messages, which I will read out, but only if they're rude. Only if they're extremely offensive. Anyway, I'm not entirely sure what Christy had planned for her, for the bit that she does or whatever, because she usually has like links and things, and then I provide like some shite to watch or something, and that dynamic has been ruined, completely and utterly ruined by tonight. So we've got we're looking at some Matt Walsh shite basically. What doesn't make Matt Walsh mad? I don't know what doesn't make Matt Walsh. That's a very good question. I'm not sure. I think a lot of things make him mad. Yeah. Oh, apologies. By the way, also, I finally, after a week, have gotten rid of, by which I mean eaten, all of the shite food I got from my nephew's christening. And my guts are... I may never recover, but are at least partially on the mend. So that's nice. You can only eat pork pie in so many days. Jesus Christ. I should have just thrown it away, but I'm cheap, you know. I'm a cheap motherfucker. I'll just put it out there now. Anyway, so Matt Walsh went on with... Oh, for fuck's sake. Oh, come on. Oh, I fucking hate you so much, OBS, you little fucking cunt. Had it all set up, it was absolutely fine, and then you decided to just, for no reason, hadn't pressed any buttons, hadn't changed a damn thing, you decided to do it on your own, you fucking little shit.
We are joined now by Matt Walsh, who is out with a new movie called Am I Racist?
He is racist, but also, he's not really a person, look at him. That's not what a person looks like. It is a stiff dick of poop.
Lord Fritters donated $3. If you donate, the TTS says the message, even if it's the most disgustingly wholesome stuff you've ever seen. In any case, you are charming, Kev. Despunker Phi.
See, yeah, that was wholesome. Family friendly. God content is what that was. God fearing, good content. If you need content. Oh, hello, 255, how are you? Yeah, fuck it, we can do this shite as well. Yeah, no problem. So we'll do the, was Nazism left wing or right wing? Lol. Fucking lol.
That is in theaters around the country. Matt obviously hosts his eponymous show with the Daily Wire. Matt, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Yeah, now the movie's doing pretty well. One of the, I don't know if it was a coincidence or fate.
Now, was Matt Walsh one of the people who's being funded by Russia, or one of the people who's openly being funded by Russia? Like, are we aware of his Russian funding yet, or not? Totally not AstroTurf nonsense. Totally, completely and utterly not AstroTurfed rubbish.
Victory is ours!
On Rotten Tomatoes, 98% and 73%. Absolute fucking rubbish.
How is the little man Kev also redeemed Zuma doing some Nazi shit?
Well, of course, Redeem Zuma's doing Nazi shit, yeah. How's the little man? Oh, my nephew, yeah, he's fine. Mostly still not talking. Again, I keep trying to do the conversation with him and he gives me nothing. Honestly, it's difficult not to take it personally. I've tried all of my conversational best bits. I've given him some of the absolutely best tip-top anecdotes. Nothing. He mostly just sort of gurgles and then goes to sleep. It's difficult to write that up positively, you know? That's not a good review. You don't pop that one in the scrapbook, do you? That's all I'm saying.
Whatever it was, as it happened, when your movie was released last week, everyone was debating whether a very particular post on social media was racist. So we thought we would play a little game of, was it racist? With Laura Loomer's...
What a surprise. I wonder what Matt Walsh will say. Intriguing. Hello, Fuzzy Numbers. How are you? Welcome in. Welcome to the Kevolution.
Infamous curry tweet. If Kamala Harris wins, the White House will smell like curry and White House speeches will be facilitated via a call center. And the American people will only be able to convey their feedback through a customer satisfaction survey at the end of the call that nobody will understand. One of the interesting things about your movie, which I really enjoyed, Ryan might have something to add on that, we might disagree on it, I really enjoyed it, is getting...
Okay, I know you're an idiot then. Okay. Look, I've only seen her in one or two things, and I was yet to form a particular opinion of her. I don't really know a lot about her. But the fact that she really enjoyed Am I Racist by Matt Walsh, you're a fucking idiot then. Okay. I don't need to take you seriously. That's what you've shown me, is that I don't need to take you seriously. You're a fucking idiot. Cool. Glad we got that sorted.
To the bottom of the the industrial complex that's been built up around race relations that often will advance this silly, incoherent, elite definition that used to be prolific in academia and then leaked out into the rest of the world. So by the sort of definition of racism that you're challenging in this film, is that Laura Loomer tweet racist? And then by the kind of definition that you're trying to promote of racism, which maybe you have a way to explain it, I would define, I don't want to put words in your mouth, as just sort of like genuine discrimination based on this belief that people of a different race are somehow inferior.
Yeah.
Is this post-racist?
I mean, by the definition advanced by, the DEI industry, it certainly would count as racist.
DEI industry. DEI industry. Oh, by the way, talking of DEI nonsense, I saw a post on social media that made me nearly come and fart and piss and shit. So the usual thing happens, a new game gets released or something, and dickheads online go mad about it. There's literally a whole cottage industry of wankers who pretend to get mad at dumb shit. It's the... fucking pronouns, gender ambiguity, modern day California shit. It's that thumb, the kind of thumb industrial complex, if you will. And my favourite phrase ever here, they made Lara Croft short, chubby, and plain-faced for the next game, complete with DEI chin, of course. DEI chin. I mean, I honestly don't see any differences really between those two chins. But also, what the fuck is a DEI chin? What is a DEI chin? And why don't we have a DEI chin on everything? I didn't even know that was an option. And now I want a DEI chin on literally every single character that's ever existed. Jesus, gotta have a DEI chin. Hitler, DEI chin. Little Red Riding Hood, DEI chin. The Big Bad Wolf, DEI chin. It's the only fucking thing. What does DEI mean? DEI literally stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's basically a way of trying to formally sort of accept people of otherwise marginalised groups into power structures and into, you know, academic institutions, things like that, right? Pretty innocuous nonsense. But when they say DEI, they generally just mean the N-word, I think. I think it's literally just a dog whistle for, like, black people or something. But also, what the fuck is what the fuck does a DEI chin mean? What? Let's get DEI chin on everything. Ever.
Right. I wouldn't call it racist. I think it's just kind of a dumb joke.
Mm-hmm.
Of course he doesn't think it's racist. Something that even Marjorie Taylor motherfucking Greene, that stupid bitch, even she said it was racist, but this motherfucker's like, I wouldn't call that racist. Well, because you don't think anything is racist, then clearly. And so again, we can ignore your content. Thank you, Elliot with bits. Thank you, some random geek, for resubscribing. Much love. And thank you, Elliot Circo with bitty bits. We are on a hype train. If we get to level 2 of the hype train, I will finger the DEI chin of humanity. I don't know what that means, but I will find out what it means and I'll do it. You have my solemn word.
Not very helpful joke. And also, by the way, I like Indian food. So I think that when things smell like curry, I'm a huge fan of curry, personally. So I don't see that as...
Shut the fuck up. You're the kind of person who thinks salt is a little bit much. You're the whitest person ever. Oh, I really enjoy Indian food. Do you mean like naan bread? You just enjoy the bread because the bread's nice and stale for you. Not stale, bland. The kind of man that horseradish would murder.
As an insult, but look, someone engaging in stereotypes, it might be insensitive, it might be unhelpful politically, but it's not necessarily racist. In fact, I would say it's often not racist because you're paid to lie. Yes, I know. To me, what racism means is that you hate people of another race and or you think they're inferior to you in some way.
Well, yes, and clearly she does mean that. When she says that White House negotiations will be facilitated by a call centre, do you think she means that in a positive way, Matthew? Do you think she means that because she really respects the call centre as a mode of communication? Or because she views them as like low-paid, kind of ground worker scum that all Indian people are? That's what she means by that, isn't it, Matt? That's what she means when she says that. You fucking prick. And you know that, and you know she's being racist, you're just paid to lie. Thank you, Plexicon, for resubscribing. 40 months. Much fucking love.
Okay. Inherently, because of their, immutable characteristics. So that's racism. And as long as you don't feel that way about another race of people, then you're not racist. You might have stereotypical views about another group of people. Everybody does. But it's not automatically racist if you don't also harbor that ill will towards them. And as far as whether or not, so the real answer is that with the Laura Loomer tweet, I wouldn't say that it's racist. The only person who can answer whether it's racist is her. We'd have to ask her.
And as we know, racists are famous and absolutely scrupulous when it comes to telling the truth about their racism. The only person that can really say would be Laura Loomer. And I trust racists when they say that they're not racist. Case closed. I think criminals should investigate themselves. Because again, they're always going to be entirely honest about what they did. I understand how humans work. I am Matt Walsh.
Well, do you hate people of Indian descent? Do you think that they're inferior to you in some way? If the answer is yes, then yeah, that's racist. But she'd probably say no. And if she said no, then I'll have to take her word for it. She's the...
Yeah, of course you would. Of course you would. The fact that she's a known liar and fucking bullshit artist, it's irrelevant.
For example, Hitler was racist. He was just a classical liberal.
True. True, Elliot. Fucking true. Classical liberal. Liberal.
The only one who can speak to her own, what's going on in her own mind and her own heart.
Although she's a Trump supporter, she wants Kamala to lose. Presumably, she's making the point in a negative way,
Well,
right?
it's also-
Like, this is a bad thing.
that's
like
kind of-
call center and, like, she's saying these are all bad things.
Well, this
right?
is an interesting point about
So that
stereotyping.
would, by your definition, make it...
Because stereotyping
Laying you
is
big
often
badge.
What? Hang on, what? Yay, new bit badge. Thank you, some random geek. Although it was just after the cut-off point, so the fucking hype train ended. But I appreciate your bits nonetheless. I do appreciate your bits.
leverage to say that there's something negative that is generally attributed to someone of a different race.
Right, it's correct. It's negative. She means it in a negative way. Because we can assume that she thinks things smelling like curry is a bad thing. I guess not a fan of Indian food. But you can believe or engage in or repeat negative stereotypes and not be racist. You might just have...
No, he didn't just say that. He didn't. So you're only racist if you've got ill will in your heart, but you can also repeat negative stereotypes about people without it being racist. Chat, what do I do? I don't know what to do. He's such a fucking idiot, man. Oh. Honestly, if I was one of the billionaire idiots funding the Daily Storm, not Daily Stormer, the Daily Wire, whatever, it's the same basic fucking thing. I'd want my money back. Because this is the kind of mental big brain genius boy that they're having there, are they? This is what my ill-gotten billions are going towards funding. Really. Because of DEI, white actresses with prism-shaped tits can't get work anymore. True. Because of the DEI fucking graphics industry making accurate-shaped breasts. This is a fucking nightmare. Shout out to all my pointy-tit sisters. Much love. Thank you, Fuzzy Numbers.
And I think, so for example, I'll give another example. Somebody might say, Asians are bad drivers. I don't know if that's actually true statistically. I'm not sure. But if you happen to believe that it's true, does that mean that you hate Asians? No, it just means that you think that Asians, by and large, are bad drivers.
Well, no, whoa. That's the point, by and large, right? Because let's drill down onto why a person might believe something like that. Whether it's statistically true is basically irrelevant. It's why does a person believe this thing? There are racist systems in place which perpetuate such lies. And there are racist currents within society that reinforce and sort of re-up those racist notions. And many of them have far more negative stereotypes than just Asians are bad at driving. It's like, 1350 fucking, black people are all criminals type shit, or like Hispanics are all here illegally, or some absurd, disgusting shit, right? Which has genuinely horrific negative outcomes for people who have absolutely no input or say on anything, and it doesn't matter whether they conform to that stereotype or whether they're the exact opposite of that stereotype. And it's why does a person believe this, and what do they believe about the thing they believe? So, for instance, with your negative drivers thing, is it something innate about Asian people? Or do you believe it's something innate about Asian people that makes them bad drivers? Not just are they statistically bad drivers or whatever, but is it something inside of themselves? Is it a thing about Asianness that makes bad drivers? Is it something inherent? It's the same thing with like this IQ shite. Even if we accept that there is an IQ gap, which by the way there basically isn't, and IQ is a really silly way of trying to put intelligence into any kind of numbered form, as if you can actually even put it into statistical quantities. It's absolute nonsense. But IQ, even if there were an IQ gap between different racial groups, how is that explained? Is it innate? Is it something a part of X, Y, or Z group that makes them stupid? Or are there systems in place which have led to educational discrepancies between different racial groups based on geography, based on socioeconomic status, based on what country you're from? Although I suppose that counts as geographic. Whatever. Geographic within nations, or, geographic between nations. And so it's not just racists to say Asian drivers are bad at driving, because statistically that may be true or may not be true. But ultimately, most people who would make such a claim have not looked into it. They've not looked at the numbers and then come to a rational and smart decision that actually Asian people are bad at drivers, right? So they're not coming at this from like a factual basis, even if they are actually technically correct in some way in one of their beliefs. And ultimately, whether they think that it's about the systems in place which lead to people acting in certain ways and the outcomes from them, or whether they think it's like some innate issue with the group of people themselves. That's the kind of racist element that underlies all of this. And the fact that he's got this surface level, like, well, technically, someone saying the Asian people can't drive very well, technically they weren't burning a cross on an Asian person's lawn, so not racist, is fucking farcical. And of course, there's an inherent bullshit behind what he's doing. Again, bear in mind that he's a paid liar. He's paid to lie to you. Lying by omission or lying directly or whatever, right? Skewing things for his own political ends. Or should I say, the political ends of his paymasters. There's a reason they want to dilute the term racism to the point where it's literally just an absolute out-and-out Nazi saying, I hate X group of people because I think they are inferior to me. That's the only thing that can be perceived as racism, because they want to get away with all of the other kinds of racism. By just going, well, I'm not as racist as this person, so I'm not racist at all. That's not racism. That's what he wants to do. Because he's a shitbag. A lying, shill shitbag.
Doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean that you're racist against them.
Although it could mean that you think there's like an intellectual inferiority, or it could mean you think there's a cultural reason that they're bad at driving in Western countries.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, and no one thinks that Asians are intellectually inferior. I think everybody understands that that's one of the other, because stereotypes can be positive too. Another stereotype is that they're very...
Oh my God, so he's literally going to do the race and IQ stuff. So in his head, he literally has just admitted that he believes in the race and IQ stuff. No one thinks that Asians are stupid, because actually this is what racists do, right? They'll say, it's not racist to believe in racial IQ differences. Asian people are often more intelligent than white people. As if that's okay then. Because you're only doing that to make black people seem worse, even though you have created the conditions in which they do worse at that specific type of test. Up to and including asking questions in ways that you know will get wrong answers from black people. You fucking little prick. Jesus Christ, what a cunt. See, he's just so steeped in like far-right shittery that he doesn't even see how absurd he is.
Very good at math and science and that sort of thing. So, there are generalizations you can make about groups of people that that can be largely true. And
white people are annoying cunts. Yeah, you can. You can definitely make arguments about that. Yep, true.
I'm not sure I've ever heard a stereotype where I thought to myself, well, that bears no resemblance to reality. I don't know, unless one of you can think of... I've never heard a stereotype where I said, I don't even know where that comes from. That's just falling out of the sky. Usually stereotypes arise because society has observed things about groups of people, and they can be negative, they can be positive, but I don't see them as...
You're an idiot then. I mean, you are just an idiot. Brilliant.
inherently racist.
No, we have a
Like, literally the one about women being bad drivers is statistically absolute bullshit. So that is just being plucked out of your arse. Yeah. We know that men are significantly worse drivers. Significantly less safe. They get into more accidents. Yeah. Because it's about reinforcing pre-existing power structures, you fucking idiot.
a clip from the film that we want to roll here. Let's go ahead and play this. This is from the dinner scene. Matt, you've probably seen this 100 times by now, but
A few times.
let's take a watch.
I used to be a white woman, an unsuccessful one, for many decades, and it was a miserable experience. And really, the hatred of yourselves and each other is like the not seeing your power, the being afraid. Like, all you do is talk shit about each other, talk shit about yourself. Oh my God, I'm so fat.
That's all they do. I'm telling you, these white women.
But that's it. I'm so fat, I'm so stupid, I'm blah, blah, blah.
Sorry.
So is he just doing slapstick then? Is that all this is? Yeah, exactly, Elliot Warman. Yeah, exactly, yeah. Thank you for the bits. It's like when people say Jewish people are good with money, so it's not anti-Semitic because it's positive. Exactly, yeah. Yeah. Ridiculous. It's a very good example.
Your kids are watching you. And they're watching you talking shit about each other, raging against the machine or being silent or whatever the hell it is that you're doing or not doing. And they know that you're not doing shit for them.
That's so important. That is so important what you just said.
What the fuck is this? What is this scene? Look, what is actually going on here? They haven't given us any context. So obviously they know they're being filmed, right? So it's not surreptitious. It's a mockumentary. So these are all just actors then, so we don't need to take anything they're saying with, like, seriousness or anything. Yeah, is it just a right-wing Borat? Yeah. It's a very good question. I don't know. Later on in this scene, he breaks the wealthy dowager's priceless vase and her monocle pops out. It is very 1950s. It is. It's cheesy. It's cheesy pie.
It's really important. That's
We
all.
may have to add you to our team.
Oh, I would love to take a seat and join you.
No, you're not allowed to.
How'd you get the...
What the fuck? What? Why did they show us that clip without any context? Because I don't know what that interaction means. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to take from that exactly. So is he actually... Alright, okay. Do they know who he is? Do they know who Matt Walsh is? Do they know they're being filmed for a Matt Walsh film? Do they know the context of any of it? When he says, "Can I take a seat?" Do they literally think he's just some random guy who's also a server who's incompetent? I don't know what the fuck is... What? Oh, they don't know who he is? Okay, so the main woman who was talking then is just a prick who said, "No, you're not allowed to sit down." Okay. Fucking hell. What a shitbag. It'd be interesting if they just told us that. It's probably the only scene that doesn't involve him being explicitly racist. Fair.
The cameras in there, by the way? Like, set that up for us.
Yeah, they're not hidden cameras.
Yeah, why? Yeah, exactly. Tell us this. You should have asked him this before the...
Obviously, they're like cinematic level.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody knew they were being...
Everybody's mic'd up. And
Everybody's mic'd. Everybody knew they were being filmed. And they thought they were being filmed for a documentary about anti-racism, which they were, because that is what we made.
True.
So that's what we told people. We're making a documentary on anti-racism.
And did they know you were involved in it?
Probably not. Probably not.
So this waiter, like they didn't know that the waiter was part of the film.
No.
Oh my God. Am I Ryan Dunn? Not Ryan Dunn. Ryan, what's his name? What's this guy's name again? Why is it not telling me this man's name? Anyway, Ryan. Am I this man now? We had exactly the same set of questions.
No, they didn't. They didn't.
But they knew you had to be Mike.
Ryan Grimm, that's it. Ryan Dunn was from fucking Jackass. Jesus.
Because everybody in the kitchen and everywhere else had signed the thing. Is that how that worked? Or?
I don't think they knew that I had a mic on. And I wanted to sit at the table at the Race to Dinner and be a part of the conversation, but we were told that they only accept women to be at the table, which I thought was interesting, because then our next question is, well, what is a woman? Which kind of harkens back to our first film.
Oh, you see what he did? He did the Why's the Whams. It's a callback to the other film he made, which is shit and doesn't answer the question in the title whatsoever.
And you later do sit down in that scene.
Yeah, well, I kind of invited him. I earned my seat at the table.
Right.
I invited myself to be a part of the dinner, and I felt
as a man does.
It's painful. Yeah.
Did a little mansplaining to the women, and they seemed to really enjoy it.
It's weird to me because they famously...
Well, that's how I know he's lying, because no woman has ever enjoyed interacting with Matt Walsh, ever.
I guess it's not so famous, but they, back in, I mean, this was years ago. I think this was pre-COVID. There was a podcast called Femsplainers that Danielle from Crittenden From, and Christina Hoff Sommers hosted, where they had a similar experience with Syra Rapp.
Wow, Christina Hoff Sommers. Well, I definitely need to listen to that as I slowly lynch myself in Minecraft.
Over the Race to Dinner stuff, and you'd think they would be way more careful, but it seems as though maybe they let their guard down. I don't know.
Yeah, that is, of course I get this question all the time. It's like, how did they not recognize me, or how did they not ask more questions? And I guess I don't know the answer to that question, but I do think that the answer I generally give that I think is correct is that a lot of these people live in kind of a bubble. So number one...
Unlike you, Matt Walsh, who gets paid by dark money shite to talk rubbish on the internet, you don't live in a bubble. You are the real America.
They're not as aware of, people outside that bubble as we assume they are. So me, as someone in conservative media, I'm actually outside of their bubble, which is weird to me because I know everybody in liberal media. Because I want to know what they're saying. So I kind of assumed that they do the same.
You're familiar with Ryan Grimm, noted liberal journalist Ryan Grimm.
So he's right about 12% of the time, which I appreciate.
I'll take that.
So, but they're kind of in this interesting bubble that they don't not only didn't know who I was, but also I think it was kind of inconceivable to them that they would ever find themselves in a room with someone who doesn't agree with them. I think it just never occurred to them because it's never happened before. Robin DiAngelo.
Robin DiAngelo. Oh my God, he's really hitting all of the 2016 memes now. Awesome.
Appears later in the film, and I think me sitting in the room with her was probably the first time in like 20 years that she's actually sat across the room from someone who doesn't already agree with everything that she...
Except, of course, when she did her book rounds and there were loads of interviews that were really hostile. Because you dickheads made it so. But apart from that, yeah.
Thanks.
Part of the 12% that I've been right about over the years, I think, has been that I do think this entire DEI industry is, a grift, and it's just milking corporations, and also that
you've written about that.
Yeah, and that it is actively harmful in the sense that when corporations, I actually do believe that corporations oftentimes internally do have racist structures set up within them. And also they operate sometimes in racist ways. And when they get sued for that, and they're facing the consequences of that, one of the things that they do is they hire these DEI consultants.
Right.
And say, well, you can't come after us, actually. How could we possibly be racist? Like, we spent this money to bring these consultants in, and the consultants then...
Yeah, I agree with him to an extent. There is a kind of... There's like an ass-covering type industry. I wouldn't call it a DEI industry, because DEI is just not really related to any of this. This is another one of their bogeyman phrases, like SJW or woke, DEI, CRT. But there's definitely like an industry of largely middle and upper middle class, and I mean that in the British sense rather than the American sense. So basically, you know, relatively well off, insincere shitters who get bullshit degrees that don't really teach them anything about race relations. They teach them what corporations need to be able to do to avoid being sued for bad race relations. And they then are hired by these companies to pretend that they're not racist. So they can still continue to be racist, but they just look like they're not racist. The police especially are fantastic at this. The police are absolutely sensational at like putting signs outside the police station that say "Welcome to the police station" in English and Hindi and Arabic and various other things. But then they're also brutalising black and brown people inside the police station. But how can we be racist? Look, we've got 2 black police officers in all of the fucking pictures, and we've got a sign outside that's in Arabic. So like, we're not racist, and yet they're stopping and searching 80% black kids. That's the point, right? It's a middle class gloss over the problem that hasn't changed. They're still fucking racist, they're still evil, but they get to present like they're not. And you can't sue them. And that's bad. It's actually probably more racist indeed, because it stops any actual solution to the problem.
For their more systemic racism to be allowed to continue without being interrogated, what it does is it turns the interrogation inward, where you say, well, these structures and these corporations can't be challenged. What we really need to do is look inside and find our own racism. And because we're all born with it or whatever.
Yeah, this is, I think, probably another example, yeah. Chichester Police's Pride post sparks social media storm. Gimmicks aren't appreciated. This is true, and this is... Look, we know that the police deal with queer groups very, very badly. Like, violently badly, and always have done. Which is why I don't think they should be allowed at Pride. Now, don't get me wrong, there have to be police there, in the sense that it's just an area where people are. That's fine. But I don't think we should be inviting them into the thing. Like you see a police officer dancing with, a drag queen, and it gets in all the papers. Look, the police aren't queerphobic. Look, here's one of them dancing with a poof. And it's that thing. It's covering for it. Again, it's just a veneer to hide the problem.
It's just inculcated in us. None of us are then responsible for it, and so therefore we're not responsible for actually changing anything on a system-wide basis. But I'm curious, as somebody who spent so much time within this grift of a system, what was your take on these folks? Do they believe what they're saying, or have they found a consultancy that is that they're able to make money on, and they're kind of now locked into it?
Yeah, it's the short answer is I don't know exactly if they believe what they say, but it strikes me that they probably don't believe much of it, especially the parts of it that are so absurd on their face. But there's a lot of money in it, as we discovered making the film, and then of course there's a lot of power in it.
Hey, as soon as I mention cops, aspiring ally turns up. Hello. Yeah. That's such appalling timing. How are you, man? It's been a while.
Oh, somebody was asking me, don't you think there's good cops?
Of course.
But this is the thing. I think there are good and great people who are cops.
Right.
But I think the term good cop
is a conundrum.
It's an oxymoron.
Right.
Because The job ain't good.
The job ain't good.
The machine, they are a part of a machine that's not good. They are agents of a machine that are not good. Are there good people in those roles? Absolutely.
Right.
Great people who really thought they were joining to make a difference and make a change, but now find themselves currently fucking up people's days. Somebody was asking me, like, don't you?
Very good point. Very good point.
Influence. And also, there's it must feel very, very good for them to be consulted as these kind of moral experts. And so that's what they get out of it. So it's actually not very complicated.
Also, Matt, you set yourself up as a moral expert. So you're basically sort of telling on yourself on that one as well.
That's why they're in this, because money, power, influence, right? It's the tale as old as time. Now, on the other hand, you've got, so that's like the Robin DiAngelos of the world, selling the books, making millions of dollars. But then you've got the people that are actually buying the books and who are going to the race to dinner and going to these seminars that we kind of crashed for our film. They're a more interesting case because they're not getting any money out of it. They're spending money, and they're not getting power influence out of it. So for them, I think part of it's like a virtue signal. They want to be able to tell their friends that, hey, I went to a race to dinner and it was so life-changing. But then most of it for those people is that I think they actually do believe it. It is speaking to something. There's like something going on inside them. I don't know if it's just like a kind of guilt or something that they carry around. And a lot of them are secular. They don't have religion. And so this becomes kind of like a replacement for religion.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Oh, God, he just hits all of the notes. He knows all of the bullshit. Oh, you fucking little cuntbag. Fuck's sake. No, that's not right. There you go. Oh. Right. I just want to put my feet up. Jesus.
I don't know if that's part of it. I think it's probably part of it.
Yeah, I feel like those people have kind of correctly identified that they were raised in a society that still does have racism as part of it.
And as I think any multicultural society always will.
Yeah, well, it's their way of kind of trying to confront it. I think it's ill thought out, but I understand where they're coming from.
But what I would say to
also,
yes, there's still racism in society.
I don't want to let that slide. What she said there about in a multicultural society, there always will, but there's racism regardless of multiculturalness. Again, she's just inculcated so many right-wing talking points within herself that somehow she thinks that multiculturalism is the thing that creates the racism, when obviously not.
Society, there always will be. As long as there are different races and cultures living together, you can have racism.
Again,
I think we have a lot.
There you go. That's the point. That's why I couldn't let it go, because the right wingers actually believe this shite. Absolute idiots.
Less of it than pretty much anywhere else on Earth. But whatever racism you find in society now is individual. It's not systemic. It's not in the system.
There's no racist policing at all. Okay, it's not systemic. Clearly. Fucking idiot.
Systems are not set up to disadvantage quote-unquote people of color. In fact, the only real systemic racism you find anymore is the kind that's targeted at white people and also Asians. That's what affirmative action is. Like that. The only time you ever find a policy that's
God, he's from 1994. This lad, I'm
specifically says, here's an advantage that you can't have if you're a race. The only time it ever says that is if it's singling out white and or Asian people. It doesn't go the other way anymore.
Well, so what about, and even
Fucking
people on the right
idiots.
now are saying Republicans have singled out Haitians, and this is an interesting segue because we were just talking about multiculturalism and how wherever you have different people from different backgrounds, races, ethnicities put together, there will always be some types of discrimination, and the goal of the culture should be to minimize that. Has there been legitimate racism?
I'm not sure he does believe the goal of society is to minimise that. Like, he might say so, but I think in his heart of hearts, Matt Walsh does not believe that.
Directed by high-profile Republican lawmakers. This is the accusation on the table towards the Haitian community in the United States, and particularly in Springfield, Ohio, in the last couple of weeks.
No, absolutely not. I haven't heard it. Everything I've heard has been critical of the fact that we're importing, thousands of people from the third world who are coming into communities. And look, America...
They're made up lies. They made up lies about the fact that people were eating dogs. Matthew, you going to ignore that? Of course you are.
Nobody thinks that it will benefit America to become more like Haiti. Nobody thinks that.
Which is why it's good that you don't have a much more powerful neighbour that's forcing you to be economically destroyed for centuries. Yeah.
Or I would challenge anyone, if they do think that, to explain how that's the case. Like, in what way could this country be improved by making it more like Haiti? When you look at Haiti, what part of Haiti are you saying to yourself, we need more of that?
Beaches.
Well, we have more beaches than them too, right? Don't we?
Right.
We're a much bigger country.
Right. We don't want a marine invasion and occupation of the United States that constantly decapitates governments and
exactly, that's the point.
Takes the money out.
Haiti, again, it's the racism inherent in that is not America shouldn't be like Haiti. It's that America made Haiti like Haiti. America imposed brutal dictatorships on Haiti. America has economically destroyed Haiti. Before that, the French and the British had been destroying it. There's a reason. It's not inherent in Haitians that they like being poor and fucked up. It's that America made it that way. Thank you, Tartan Wanderer, for subscribing. Much love.
Out of the country. And it saddles us with
we don't want the Clintons
debt
either.
from a revolution. Yeah.
Right. Although I don't. So you're saying that
we wouldn't want to be like basically a colony that the entire West spends 200 years punishing after the Haitian Revolution.
I get that. I understand that, but also at a certain
we
point,
wouldn't want that. No, yes.
We wouldn't want that, but I would also say that that's not entirely why Haiti's in the position that it's in. I mean, at a certain point, as a country, you have to stand on your own 2 feet and take care of it.
Right, that's, again, Matt, how do they do that? Exactly. How do they do that? What genuinely, I'd like to know. Matt, what's your advice to the Haitian government? When you say, look after yourself, how do they do that? Because if they try and look after their own people, their government will be accused of being communist and America will overthrow it again. The only way a Haitian government can possibly survive is just by being brutal and authoritarian. They've learned that. Because America has reinforced that consistently. How do they do that, Matt? What is your fucking proposal to the Haitian government for how they improve the lives of Haitians?
Of yourself. And
but at what point is that? They elect Aristide and we overthrow Aristide. Then they elect Jovenel Moïse. Jovenel Moïse is assassinated a bunch of people with American connections, and then we install in 2021, like the United States installed the prime minister that we just ousted. Like, so we could say, okay, yeah, you got to get over the 200 years ago, but like we're still doing it.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not in favor of. I'm very non-interventionist in my policies, so I'm not in favor of most of the things that were...
Except that you vote for people consistently who do these things. Again, your words are nothing. Your words mean nothing to me. If you vote consistently for neoliberal ghouls who will enforce that shit, you're no better than them. You actually do support that.
Doing in other countries?
We just made the new government in Haiti in a hotel room in Jamaica. And then we insisted that whatever government we made in Jamaica had to allow Kenyan troops to come in under the flag of the UN in order to go to war with the gangs.
Yeah, I'm not interested in, right. If it were up to me, I'm not interested in doing anything in Haiti. Like let Haiti be Haiti and take care of them. That's sort of my whole point here. Let them take care of themselves and their own problems. I'm also not saying that there's like never a scenario where we would let someone from Haiti into the country. But it doesn't have to just be about Haiti, but when you're throwing open the gates and just
they're not open, are they though? You know they're not open.
Inviting anyone, in particular, the third world.
I guess your assumption there was that it is Haitian people that are creating the conditions on Haiti, and that if the Haitian people come to Springfield, they will recreate the conditions.
Well, but I don't think you
Haiti in Springfield. Whereas what I'm saying is that it's actually the U.S. that has.
I don't think you can entirely put it on
largely.
But it's still a country comprised of people, right?
But without its own autonomy.
Yeah, it's a country comprised of people who have never had a realistic say in the way in which they're governed. Because if they ever elect anyone vaguely to the right of Mussolini, America gives them freedom.
Yes,
okay, but you can't. I don't think you can entirely put it on the United States. Like the Haitian people.
He just told you they imposed an unelected government in 2021, Matthew. This is not something from 200 years ago. Although you were fucking around in Haiti 200 years ago as well, and the French and the British before that, okay? Look, they're still doing it now. The Haitian people are being fucked over by American foreign policy today, Matthew. So yes, you can put it on America. Because the Haitian people aren't allowed to run their own affairs. Sorry, to the left of Mussolini, not the right, yeah, my bad.
Have nothing to do whatsoever with the state of their own country. Nothing. I mean, I think that's a bit absurd. I'm perfectly willing to, as I said,
absurd on
agree.
what basis? Absurd on what basis, Matthew? What realistic say have the Haitian people had in their own affairs? Because he just gave you at least 2 or 3 examples there within very recent memory of the American government overthrowing democratically elected leaders in Haiti.
That a lot of the United States sort of adventurism and interventions in other countries has been unwise, and I'd prefer for us to focus on our own country, not try to build governments in other countries. But at the same time, I think that you can't completely absolve the people of any country of the problem, just like in this country. The problems that we have in our country, we can point to the government, we can point to immigration, we point to all those things. But ultimately, like, the people of the country have to be responsible for their own nation.
Right, but who's imposing your government? What other country is coming in and fucking you over, Matt?
And I say that of all nations. Right, fair enough. So you said earlier that we have less racism here than lots of other countries, which I think is a fair point to make.
Glass half full.
And obviously you would acknowledge that at some point in our history.
I don't know what honestly, I genuinely want to get inside the brain of the average American, because I don't know what Americans think of themselves. I genuinely don't know how Americans view themselves and come to the conclusions they do. The entirety of American culture is so permeated with American exceptionalism that I don't think they can truly view themselves at all. They're so full of shit. Yeah, and Andy's a lib, yeah, true.
Sure, we had lots of racism, right?
Sure.
Lots of racism then, less racism now.
Mm-hmm.
So when did we get to a point where it wasn't systemic?
Hey, hello Utah outcasts, how are you? It's been a while, much love.
And it was no longer a problem.
Everyone go and follow the Utah outcasts.
Problem that we as a democratic society need to deal with. Like, what was the moment in your mind?
Well, I'm not sure that you could point to one exact moment in time when it goes from a systemic issue to not systemic anymore. But what we know for sure is that right now we are certainly in the moment where it's not systemic.
No, that's definitely not the case. And the fact that he said that twice now and hasn't been challenged on it is really, really annoying. Because it is definitely systemic. The police are, look, endemically fucking racist. Let alone queerphobic and misogynist and all the rest of it.
Any time in history, I'll answer your question. Yeah. At any point in history, when you can go back and look at actual laws and policies that were in place that deprived Black Americans or any other group of rights, well, that was a time when you had systemic, and we know that existed historically. Yeah. So if you wanted to point to an exact moment, I mean, I guess the most obvious moment would be the Civil Rights Act.
I saw the comment in chat. Who was it from? Elliot Woman. He's definitely gonna say the Civil Rights Act. I saw that and I thought I won't mention it. We'll see if it comes true. And he said it straight away. He literally said it straight away. Unfucking believable. Unbelievable.
But, of course, these are changes that happen gradually over time. Just like with slavery, you can't, even with slavery, you can't really, people like to point to the Emancipation Proclamation as the moment when slavery was ended. Of course, we know that wasn't when it ended. So we know we don't have slavery anymore.
Well, no, again, you do have slavery, just in jails. It absolutely says that you can't do slavery except as a punishment in jails. So you still do have slavery. You actually still do.
But if you were to ask me, what's the exact moment when slavery stopped? Well, it wasn't an exact moment. It was a gradual ending of that horrific institution. But certainly now it doesn't exist anymore.
Except in jails.
In this country, anyway. And I'd say the same thing with systemic racism as well, that nobody is creating policies, again, that are deliberately intended to create disadvantages.
Except, of course, in Mississippi, where they were literally found to have broken the Constitution by enacting racist voting division in terms of their congressional seating. They deliberately did that. So that's a thing that had been happening in Mississippi for decades and was racist.
For quote-unquote people of color.
I have a question about that. A lot of conservatives will say there is one policy, and this is, you're about as anti-abortion and pro-life as it gets. A lot of conservatives will say a remaining institution of systemic racism is abortion, because it disproportionately, as conservatives make this argument, affects black children and black families. Is that an example of systemic racism or racism, period?
And I think it's a mistake when conservatives make that point, because I think conservatives are very desperate to be able to do the whole thing where they turn back on Democrats and say the Dems are the real racists.
Yes.
And I just think that's a lame move.
You do that all the time, mate. You do that whenever it's possible.
And you're trying to use the left's own language against it, which I think it doesn't work because you're accepting sort of their premise.
So he agrees that you should be a prick, but you shouldn't do it in a woke language. Brilliant. Exceptional work, Matt.
What I say about abortion is, no, it's not systemically racist. It does disproportionately impact the black community, no question about it. But does it exist for that? Really, is Planned Parenthood, is that why they exist right now? Because they want to kill black babies? No, Planned Parenthood exists because they want to kill babies, and they don't care what color the baby is.
It's because they want to No, they want to provide health care. Planned Parenthood's entire business model, or not business model, its entire activity, 99.9% of it is not abortion. I'm always reminded of it's incredibly moving and disgusting story of a young woman going to a Planned Parenthood because she couldn't afford to go to the hospital or anything, to be treated for the STI she'd picked up from having been raped. And an anti-abortion activist spitting in her face, telling her she was a murderer for going into the Planned Parenthood. But they only exist to kill babies, according to big brain boy Matthew Walsh.
They just want the money that comes from it. But it just so happens that ends up disproportionately impacting the black community. And this goes to the disproportionate impact thing, which I'm glad you brought that up, because that's usually what's used to support the theory of systemic racism, is they say, well, but these policies disproportionately impact certain groups. Okay, they might, but that doesn't mean that they're intended to do that. A disproportionate number of black Americans end up in prison. Does that mean that that's why the prison is there, to put black?
No, prisons existed prior to the situation you're referring to. But there's no doubt that policing and the courts are disproportionately aggressive against black people. We know this, Matt. Look, studies have actually been done on this. They do sentence black people to longer for lesser crimes.
Black Americans in it? No. The reason why a disproportionate number of black Americans end up in prison is that, unfortunately, a disproportionate number of black Americans commit violent crime. That's just what the stats show.
Okay, and why do they do that? could there be a socio-economic reason for why black people commit more crimes, Matthew? Assuming they even do. Let's go with it. Could there be a reason, like, say, I don't know, poverty, that literally leads to people committing crimes at a higher rate? Matthew.
And
right. So there's an argument that a system is what it does, and that claiming otherwise is just kind of hocus pocus, just magic. Like if the system produces a certain result, but you as an observer of that system say, well, actually, that's not what the system is supposed to do. Those words are just meaningless.
What about
and
a
that
system?
The system just chews them up and spits them out and produces and continues to produce the result that it produces. Like, for instance, during Jim Crow, pre-Civil Rights Act, you've got laws on the books that are systemically racist, that allow for straight up racist results. When it comes
design of the system was explicitly racist.
Design of the system is aimed at producing segregated schools and low-income households. Low-income neighborhoods that are predominantly or almost exclusively populated by Black Americans, right?
Mm-hmm.
You then pass laws that reform those laws, that make it so that you can't legally do those things anymore. Yet the power structure broadly remains in place, and the results stay the same. You still have, broadly speaking, massive low income.
Yeah, like we know that redlining laws have been introduced to try and stop the racial segregation of rich areas and poor areas into white areas and black areas, and yet they're predominantly exactly where they were 50 years ago. Because you haven't changed the economic system at all. You haven't, in fact, actually it's gotten worse and worse and worse over time. To the point where the rich stay rich and the poor stay poor. So, of course, they can't move into those white areas because they can't afford to fucking move there. Which means they have worse educational outcomes, which means the next generation are also poorer. And the cycle continues.
Income areas, predominantly populated by Black families. And you continue to have segregated schools.
Anti-redlining laws, yeah.
And so a person who was born into this country today, if they're Black, they're more likely to grow up in one of those neighborhoods. They're more likely to go to terrible schools rather than good schools. They're more likely to end up in prison or in part of the system. And so you would step back and say, well, the system is still doing what it is. The system never stopped doing it. There was never a day from Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday that all of a sudden the system stopped working in the same racist way, which we acknowledge was racist when it was written into the law.
Although the system produces...
But now we pretend it's not because we struck through that one line.
Yeah, but if we agree that you say the system is what it does, I'd probably disagree with you on that. What the system is intended to do is what it certainly matters here.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. The outcomes are what matter. I don't care how well-intentioned your bullshit is, if it leads to more racism. South Alabama lawsuit allows residents to vote for the first time in decades. Oh, God. Thank you, Marcus, yeah. Residents in a small Alabama town will be able to vote in their own municipal elections for the first time in decades after a 4-year legal battle. Proposed settlement has been reached in the town's voting rights case, allowing New Bern, a predominantly black town, what a surprise, with 133 residents to hold its first legitimate elections in more than 60 years. Amazing. New Bern is about an hour away from Selma, where civil rights activists were brutally attacked on the Edmund Pettus Bridge while marching for voting rights in 1965. Well, I'm glad to see Alabama has definitely reformed its ways and is definitely not hella racist still.
But also, why would it matter what we intend a system to do? Like if
Because that's what we're talking about.
if I
The
build
system
a,
produces a
yeah.
robust Nigerian middle class, like people who come here from Nigeria. Thomas Sowell makes this point. It's a point that's
So
popular.
then that's a
right?
defense of the system.
That's what I'm
because
saying.
that's what it does.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So does
Right.
that go both ways?
No, because the intent of this. My point is that the intent, whatever you intend a system to do, is meaningless. Like if you intend for a house to have a roof and a second floor that is sturdy, but when you walk into the second floor, you fall through it.
But that
and the
doesn't
roof
reflect
collapses on you.
But that doesn't reflect
Yeah.
on your
Yeah.
anti-roof sentiments.
Yeah, and also
It doesn't matter.
And
Like,
also,
you
if you
built a
okay, but to
crappy
use your
house.
analogy, if you walk into a house and there's a problem in the house, you can't automatically assume that it's the fault of whoever built the house. It could be, depending on the problem. But what you
What the fuck are you talking about?
also have to look at who's living in the house, who's supposed to be maintaining the house, and if you're living in a
We're 2/3 of the way through. We'll get to the end.
house and you're not taking care of it, and in fact you're mistreating the house and it goes to hell, and then you turn around and blame whoever built the house 100 years ago, well, I'm going to say, like,
Who are the interviewers? There's Ryan Grimm and someone else. I don't fucking know who they are. I don't know.
this is at some point you got to take responsibility for your own house, and so that's my point with the black community as it stands right now in America. Yes, as we've already established, there was actual systemic racism against the black community for a long time. It's a terrible, evil thing. Everybody agrees on that point. I don't think anyone
No, there are lots of people who, like you, Matt, don't agree with that.
disagrees. That is over now.
That's the right-wing shell game. Pretend that you would never have supported that. I would never have supported it. Yeah, you would. Yeah, you absolutely would. You would have been one of the people at the baseball game shouting at Jackie Robinson. You'd have been one of the people attending a lynching if you could. You absolutely would. And it's still ongoing.
There is no longer a system in place that is designed to deprive black Americans of rights. I mean, would you agree with that at least?
No, I do think it's still designed that way, but it's designed in a way where it can't be litigated because it's not in
where?
the law.
Okay, but so can you point to me an exact point of the system, an exact place in the system, a policy that is designed to deprive black Americans?
The war on drugs. We know absolutely for a fact it was instituted against black people. And hippies, but mostly black people. Yeah, there you go.
Of rights.
The same people that designed the system to protect the wealth of the upper class, in the throughout American history, like continued to be in control.
Yeah, but now you're talking about class, not race. I'm talking about race.
Right, but how do you
well, it's not quite the same thing, of course. There are rich black people and there are poor white people. But when we talk about socioeconomics, Matt, so often when it intersects, there you go, intersectionality, mate. Fuck you. With race, it's the idea that there are large black urban populations which are kept down deliberately through economic policy. There are, of course, a large number of poor whites who are kept in that same way. And those people need to be liberated too. But they're not being kept down because they're white.
disrupt class if you're so segregated by? I mean, how do you disrupt race if you're so segregated by class?
Well, but I don't think you can bring class into this, because I mean, I would agree that we could talk about class. I'll agree that there are elites who care about themselves and don't care about the
Yeah, and they fund the Daily Wire.
The lower class. I would say that those people are just as unconcerned with a white person in a trailer park in Appalachia as they are unconcerned with a black person in the inner city. Because it is class. We could talk about that. But my question was, because we talk about the system, it's a broad concept here. So let's narrow it down. Let's find a piece of the system that we can point to and say, well, this is designed to hurt black people.
Okay, so if you go to Georgia, for instance, after they implemented school desegregation, what they started doing is saying, oh, okay, well, we can't legally keep black people out of our neighborhoods or out of our schools, but what we can do is we can secede from our neighborhoods. I mean, you've been to the Atlanta suburbs?
A little bit.
Like every four,
Unfortunately.
like every four,
Try to stay away.
Yeah.
like every 4 blocks for for a long time, you had like new school districts, and they would be drawn. They would be just basically gerrymandered. Like they would know where the white people were, and they would gerrymander the school district so that only white people would be at part of this.
Yeah, but you're going back to desegregation.
No. This is what they're doing now.
Matt Walsh is such an idiot. He's such a fucking idiot.
Up to today. Like, so what they're doing is they're saying, okay, these are the new laws in place. However, we like our system of segregation and racism that we have here. So how do we hire the best lawyers?
Is that about class? Or
to show that, but it's also about race.
Well, but I'm saying, do you think primarily in the minds of the designers of the system, are they actually discriminating intentionally on a class basis,
or
is it
pretty race driven?
I don't think that there's any evidence that it's race driven.
You didn't even know a second ago that it was happening now, Matt. How are you such an expert? I don't think it had anything to do with race. 5 seconds ago, you didn't know it was happening. And now you're an expert who definitely knows that there's no evidence it's racially based. There's the shell game, everybody. There it is. Naked for the world to see.
I think in like an example you give, it's class, it's people wanting to avoid crime-ridden, impoverished areas. It just so happens that all those crime-ridden, impoverished areas are black areas because they made it that way. When I say they, I mean redlining laws, and white people made it that way. And now we're going to continue to do it, but it's nothing to do with race. It's purely economics, I assure you. Maybe someone doesn't want to send their kids to school in a place that's high crime, where there's going to be a lot of delinquency and everything in the school system. I don't think it's because the kids are black, it's just because of that. And also, the other thing is when we talk about...
Also, why are they okay with there being bad schools? Why is America... Like, all of these discussions are predicated that there are lots of bad schools and there will always be loads of bad schools, and we can't change that. Why don't you make it so that bad schools aren't a fucking thing? Or at least are less of a thing. You're never going to make it perfect, but you could invest to try and improve the situation if you cared. If you weren't just racist and pretending not to be.
What point
hold on a second. When we talk about school districts or the way communities are set up, here's another point that rarely comes up. It's pretty simple. You can move, right? So you can always move. I mean, if you live in a community where you're claiming it's been set up in a systemic...
Really? So if you're really poor and your house is worth like $3 and you sell that and move to an area where the houses are worth $500,000, they'll accept that $3. They'll just accept that, and literally everyone can do that because there are enough houses for all of the people of those inner city areas to move into these nice areas, right? And who's going to buy your house in the shit area? Is it fucking Aquaman?
To disadvantage it. I don't buy that, but if I did, I would say, well, you should probably move from that community. I mean, you can go somewhere else. It's not, there's no law saying you can't. And if there was a law saying...
Some HOA situations will like try to block.
Yeah, but they're not going to say you can't move here if you're black.
It's also why a lot of black community groups support voucher systems to allow, like work with conservatives on voucher systems to allow kids to get to different schools.
So when you see stats that say like...
I think he was right to ignore that point.
A black homeowner who's trying to get a mortgage, who has a higher credit score and higher income, gets a higher interest rate from the average bank than a white applicant. A bunch of these studies have been done where they'll put in like a black sounding name and higher credit scores, higher income, better candidates on paper other than their name, and they get a overall, there have been so many studies that have replicated this, they get a higher interest rate, which means their cost of borrowing is higher, means the mortgage is higher, which means you have to have that much more, money to move into the neighborhood that you're talking about. So systemically, it doesn't say, well, if you're black, you can't live here, but systemically what it does is it makes it easier for white people to move into these wealthier neighborhoods, harder for black people to move into those neighborhoods. And that's before you even get to the wealth effect. Jim Crow, only ended recently, which means that if you look at the kind of savings rates and the inheritance rates for the average black family, it's close to nil, especially after the subprime mortgage wipeout of 2008, compared to white families, which can go to mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and say, can you help
Get a small loan of $1 million. Yeah.
put my kids in private school? Can you pay the down payment? 20% is an awful lot for this mortgage.
Generational wealth.
Yeah.
Right.
So you combine the fact that they have to pay higher interest rates with the fact that there's lack of generational wealth. That to me is systemic, but I'm curious.
An entirely inappropriate audio segue there. Thank you, Lesbian Hot Sauce, for raiding in. Much love to you. Hello, LHS viewerinos. You should all go and follow. Every one of you in here now should go and follow Lesbian Hot Sauce immediately on all of the platforms. We are watching Matt Walsh being destroyed with facts and logic. Or at least being gently prodded by facts and logic by some liberals.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got them. Victory is ours.
But they are liberals, so don't expect too much. Don't expect a lot here, okay? But we're going with it.
Specifically on the interest rate.
New people, hello there. You should hit the follow button. Hello.
Question: what's going on there, and should that be a problem that we as a democratic society should address? Why are black loan applicants paying higher mortgage interest rates across the board? And again, that is replicated across the economy.
Okay.
We'll get to what Matt Walsh thinks in just a second. What is this?
Okay, so work has been really hard recently. I work for an organisation that we support local actors around the world in the Commonwealth defending LGBT rights. It's difficult, it's challenging, and funding's been a real issue. And this morning, or this afternoon, I get told that Chapel Rowan is fundraising, or has fundraised for our organisation, and £1 for every ticket from her UK tour is going to our organisation. And it's the most exciting, amazing thing I've ever heard.
That is genuinely amazing, especially because I never even heard of this person, Chapel Rowan, whatever, 2 weeks ago, and now apparently she's the biggest star ever or something. She's literally hosting fucking SNL, or is appearing or something. I don't know, whatever. That's amazing. Also, good for her and good for Lesbian Hot Sauce. That's amazing. Love it.
I'd have to look at the studies you're talking about. You say that they've been replicated time and time again. There's no issues with the studies, and there's no issues methodology.
I'm sure people could pick some of the studies apart, but it's pretty well accepted.
Yeah, I'd have to know who is accepted by exactly, but...
so he's just going to... Matt, you don't have to make it so obvious that no matter what evidence you get shown, you will just naysay it by saying, oh, it's some liberals. So a leftoid said it was good, so I disagree. We know that's what it is. We know that you will never accept any evidence of systemic racism because you are paid to lie. You are being paid money by evil billionaire pricks to lie on their behalf. So you will never accept anything. You don't have to make that point so blatantly obvious, though. You could at least pretend that you're acting in good faith. You could do that, couldn't you, Matt? I believe in you. I believe sincerely that you are capable of at least that lie. And yet you can't even be bothered. Is Matt the divorced one? No, he's one of the rare conservatives who actually got married and seems to be in something of a at least functional marriage. I don't know how happy it is, but it's certainly functional by the looks of things. So many of these family values types are often it seems they're just bigots, really, isn't it? They're just
Victory is ours!
They're just nasty individuals who want to control people. Oh, Jesus Christ. I mean, it's not wrong. It's a spicy one. It is a spicy one. Let's just deal with that straight off the bat. It's a very, very spicy meme. Not entirely incorrect. Not entirely incorrect.
So for the sake of argument, let's say that those studies are totally legit. I would still go back to a class issue on that. And the reason is that, look, banks...
But the white...
Well, can we explain?
Yeah, but it's not a class issue, is it? He's saying, like, what would you even put down as a working class name? He literally said they put down black names. So there are traditionally black names. Like, we've played on the idea of, like, where's the thing again? I've still got the list somewhere. Have I? Yeah, here we go. So these are, again, I'll just go through them, right? These are the list of some of the genuine names of African Americans who are professional footballers, as in NFL pig throwing football, right? There's Swayze Bozeman, Quantez Stiggers, Jake Bobo, Juice Scruggs, Jackson Powers Johnson, Storm Duck, amazing still, Chubba Hubbard, Devondre Sweat. These are the names of real African American people who actually exist, right? There are a series of naming mechanisms, or whatever you want to call them, that are these from the Key and Peele skit? No, but they're my version of the Key and Peele skit. It's sort of me bouncing off that idea of the amazing names that they have in American football, right? So there are names like, if you put down, I don't know, Shaniqua Washington, in your head you're thinking that's a black woman. You just are. There's no point pretending that you're more woke than woke. If you say that name, you instantly think, boom, that's a black woman. So you're going to react as if that person is black when you don't know what their name is. Whereas if you put Dan Evans, I mean, he could be a black guy, but you're probably thinking white guy. So they did this study where they put down more black-sounding names and more white-sounding names, and the black-sounding names had better credit scores and better histories, and the white people still got better results because of the inherent racism within that system. It's got nothing to do with socioeconomics, prick. They were testing specifically on race and found that the system was racist.
Like, banks care about the money. That's all they care about. They don't care about, I mean, these banks are not being run by people who are saying, we got to keep black people poor. They don't care about.
Right. No one's saying that that is necessarily the case. It's inherent. It's within the system. It's built in. No one is saying that literally members of the KKK are the only people that banks employ. And yes, they do care about money. But part of the reason is that they think that black people, or they have a slant towards the issue, that they think that black people are less likely to repay loans. At least in part because of things like the 2009 financial crash, which itself was predicated on the idea of subprime mortgages. In other words, lending more money to black people than they knew they could possibly pay back. So therefore, white people and white financial institutions borrowed to black people in a way that they knew was bound to make black people fail financially, and then reinforcing that further down the line by charging their children more in order to loan them any amount of money because of a perceived lack of financial stability within black communities caused by white people. And the system goes round and round and round and round.
About that. I don't think they care about anybody. They care about the money. And so if that's happening, they're making stereotypical assumptions, class-based assumptions.
No, not class-based. Because again, if I tell you Shaniqua Washington is implied for a loan, you have no idea what her class is. You may have some assumptions, but you have no idea what it is. You think black woman, But it could be that they're opening a business. It could be that they need a student loan to go to fucking Harvard. Or it could be a subprime mortgage loan because they are poor. You have no idea at that point. My man, stop trying to obfuscate. We know there is racism in the system. But the point is, you quite like the racism in the system, don't you? There's the real Rob.
That I believe they would probably also make if somehow they got they had the impression that this was, say, a white, quote unquote, white trash, as they're often called, from the trailer park. You know, if I think the banks would have the same sort of skeptical, discriminatory attitude in that case as they would to someone.
Except, of course, that wasn't factored into this. This was purely a race thing, wasn't it, my man? This was just a racial thing. And the banks showed themselves to be racist. This had nothing to do with class.
One who they're assuming is from the inner city, let's say.
Right, but so the other word for that would be implicit bias. So let's say the banks.
We have to wrap, by the way. We have a hard no.
Oh, but let's say we got to wrap in a second. But let's say the banks only do care about money. That's a reasonable thing to say. So then, what could explain?
Although again, because they're liberal cunts, they won't accept that actually, whilst it's a perfectly reasonable thing to say, as in it is a factor of reality, so it's a description of a thing that exists, none of them are going to question why that's okay, or why we should allow such, at best, amoral and at worst, immoral institutions to run the world. They're not ever going to question that. The fact that you have these rapacious, fucking money-hungry monsters able to purchase entire countries, overthrow governments, deplete the world's natural resources, that's fine. Don't need to question that, just as long as they're not doing it racistly. Liberals, man. Fucking liberals.
Why they would treat the two differently? It would have to be, like you're saying, but what you're saying is there might be some implicit bias toward, if they could identify some poor white guy, which goes to the point, though, of how it's easier for poor whites, which I was used to be one of, but it was easier for me to migrate out. My name is Ryan Graham.
I don't even think
you can't even tell that I was white trash.
Right.
I mean, you can if you know me pretty well, but but you can't tell on a resume or an application.
You see his
to a
arrest
bank.
record.
Yes.
I don't know. You're wearing a tie and everything. I wouldn't say. I mean,
there you go.
You could have fooled me.
Yeah.
Look, but I wouldn't even call it implicit bias. I think it's just like banks. They are biased against people they don't think will pay their mortgage, basically.
Right. And so why don't?
Right. And the point is, one of the ways in which that perception exists is because banks lent to black people in ridiculously bound to fail ways. The subprime credit crunch or the subprime mortgage crunch should really be studied from a racial perspective. And it probably has been, to be fair. I'm not like au fait with all of the academic data on it. In terms of the ways in which the banks created the conditions which led to an inevitable outcome, which the banks and other societal powerful institutions have used as an example of why black people can't be trusted with money. They've created the conditions that they now use to impose upon further generations of black people. Poverty, degradation, and squalor. And, of course, the associated problems of criminality and drug and drink abuse that come along with those social ills.
They think a person with a black name will pay their mortgage.
Because I think in that case,
despite a high credit score and a high income.
If that is true, then they're making assumptions they're making class-based assumptions. This is a lower.
No, it's not class-based. It's fucking racially based. Oh my god. Oh god. Matt. You're a fucking idiot, mate. You're a fucking idiot. You're an idiot, and you're wrong. Shut the fuck up. Shut up, you cunt.
income person coming from a low income neighborhood, even if their current income is, the same as, that's the background. And so
sounds like those people face a systemic problem.
Go.
Well, class-based, but that's what I'm talking about.
So you agree we need to do class-based reorganization of society? I don't think your employers would like that, Matt.
Yeah, we're getting told
we're getting it in the ear.
Okay, that was fucking painful and shit. That was painful and shit. I apologise for bringing it to you. That was awful. I fucking hate it. On a more positive note, Birmingham City are doing well at the moment. We're doing brilliantly well at the moment, yes. We are joint top of the league, albeit the third best league in Britain, so let's not fucking pat ourselves on the back too much, but it is going well. I've rather enjoyed it thus far. Anyway, what I won't enjoy is this wanker. Who remembers Metatron? He's an idiot. He's a classical liberal. So naturally he's going to say that the Nazis were left-wing. Literally called, was Nazism left-wing or right-wing? The only people asking that question are people who are wrong, basically. Because everyone else has worked out that they're right. Basically, everyone from like the far, far left to the kind of relatively soft right agree that the Nazis were right-wing. Then there's a section of conservatism that say it's left-wing. And then you go beyond them to actual Nazis, and they're like, no, we are very right-wing, actually, yes. Yeah. So it's just that one little section of, like, people from the kind of softish right to the kind of hardish right that are like, no, that they're left-wing. Because they're relatively close to Nazism, but don't want the negative optics of Nazism. So they pretend that actually the Nazis are nowhere near us. They're all the way over there on the left. Honest, guys. It's just rightist respectability politics. As a lie. Let's take a look. This guy is an Italian who lives in America and makes very, very silly, poorly argued history videos. Yeah. Although it would help if he wasn't muted.
Was Nazism left-wing or right-wing? Well, believe it or not, this question...
It was right-wing. It was literally, it was right. It was very right-wing. Yep. That's literally as far as that discussion needs to go.
Gets asked around a lot, and there are several creators that provided answers. Well, the thing is that today's answer will be grounded on history and political science. But before we do that, let's talk about the question proper.
Oh god. Contents of this video. Number 1, prism of evaluation. Okay. Number 2, inconsistent nomenclature. That's where he gets to do wordplay and pretend that words don't really mean what they mean. Okay. 3, the convergence of extremes. Okay, so we're definitely getting horseshoe theory. Yes! Fuck yes! Love horseshoe theory! The dumbest thing in existence. 4, European definition versus American definition. Okay. Number 5, economic policies. I mean, literally kill me. In Minecraft. 6, private property and corporatization of the private sector. It's corporatism, not real capitalism. I'm a smart boy. 7, race. That could be spicy. And 8, Hitler on religion. Honestly, I'm genuinely moist at the thought of number 8. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to hear what he has to say about this. That is, honestly, I am tingling with excitement.
We got him. Victory is ours.
Welcome, Hella Sausage. Welcome to the Kevolution, friend. Okay, people, let's delve in.
This question is a form of ahistorical syllogism. You'll see several people giving you answers today in the comments down below. The same people will not watch this video and they will type either obviously was right-wing or of course it was left-wing. In my opinion, there are two.
You've got an interesting audience if you think that any of them are going to press it was right-wing. I think. Let's have a look. Yakov Smirnov said it best. In America, you can go to the White House and say, I don't like Reagan. Soviet Russia had free speech too. Well, no, it didn't. You can go to the Kremlin and say, I don't like Reagan. Oh, okay. Okay, brilliant. It was clearly right-wing. Ha ha ha. Lenin stated it, you can't have democracy until everyone is equal under socialism. The left's use of the term democracy is common and has been since Marx. What I enjoy are people calling Trump a Nazi, then turn around and support Hamas. Oh, we've got a Zionist for no reason. Cool. My politics is slightly left of centre. Tried telling someone very far left once that I always found Nazism to be a rather leftist ideology. Hello there, fellow soft leftists. They raised their voice and got extremely angry with me rather than hearing what I had to say. Yeah, it's interesting that when you talk shit to people, they don't react positively to you. Yeah. Crazy that. Do you get that reaction a lot, people telling you to fuck off? I bet you do. The oversimplification of pop culture politics, there's so many issues, blah, blah, blah. The concept of left versus right was popularised by the French, not Americans. Who cares? Right-wing aspect of Nazism, loving your country. Left-wing activism, literally everything else. Oh, I've got to try it. Oh, I love that. I'm fucking screenshotting that. That's a beauty. That's a fucking belter. God damn. Were Nazis right-wing or left-wing? Ernst Röhm, yes. Brilliant. If we make it simple, Nazis and communists were siblings who fought each other for land. You are so wrong. I don't even know where to fucking begin with you. Hell, the American model of left versus right rarely works in America. People are not so simple. The reason this is not even a question is they were both. The Nazis were proof positive that centrism can be extreme. That's an amazing sentence. That gets screenshotted as well. I might need to do a video just on this comment section, I think. I'm going to read that for you again. The reason this is even a question is that they were both. The Nazis were proof positive that centrism can be extreme. I've never, ever heard a person call the Nazis centrists. There is, of all of the things I've ever heard the Nazis called, and I've heard them called many, many things, some good, some bad, some true, some not so true, I've never heard them called centrist before. That is the dumbest take ever. We found it. The internet needs to be shut down now. We have found the single dumbest take in the history of humanity. It is not possible to be more wrong than this. It is not possible to be more wrong than this human being has been. It needs to cease. Humanity needs to go back to just making fires with rocks and sticks. It's over. He's got an audience of fucking idiots, which I suppose is appropriate.
Two major problems here. One, they use the American left-right dichotomy or political spectrum and they forcefully apply it to historical European political regimes and ideologies. Hence, the first problem with the Western proper is geographic or spatial in nature. Two, they use 21st century political spectra and juxtapose them over 20th century politics. Thus, the second problem is temporal. The incongruence between modern and 20th century political definitions within the right-left dichotomy is a complex phenomenon rooted in evolving socioeconomic shifting of global dynamic.
I'm not saying that Ian Miles Chung is not the most wrong person on the internet. That could have been him. It definitely gave me Chung vibes.
Thus, this discrepancy necessitates of a nuanced analysis of the factors that contribute to this divergence. Within these dynamics, the correct and coherent answer is going to be fractal, as there is no clean definition overlap. History is a multidimensional phenomenon. Expecting, therefore, 21st century American political ideas to overlap neatly and perfectly.
I do hope he moves on from pretentious fart sniffing at some point. That would be good.
With 20th century
so far it's just been him like, I'll use long words. That will baffle people.
European political factions in order to come out with an answer is a flawed analytical method. So, the people who are categorically stating it was left-wing, it was right-wing, are not answering to present a comprehensive analysis.
Yes, you are the real true centrist who understands Nazism. Cool, awesome.
Of policies, ideologies, historical actions, military interventions, economic, religious and social positions pushed by said regimes. They are just insulting the other side. They are free to do it, of course, but just so we are clear about what those answers are. Make no mistake, Nazi is a slur, and so people want to use it to identify and describe their political opponents. That is why, I would argue, it works as a conduit to the detriment of your political opposition when it comes to mass and public opinion. In this framework, fascism...
Yeah, people don't like Nazis, so referring to someone as a Nazi is a slur. Yes, okay. Have you been called that before? Have you been called that? Is that how that works? Do you think you've been unfairly smeared as a Nazi? Is that the entire reason for this video? I don't know that slur is the right term, but certainly, like, let's say it's a word of denigration, an insult. And I suspect he's just really fucking ass-blasted that that he's been called that before. He's been called a Nazi once or twice for his stupid views, whether rightly or wrongly, and he's coping. He's definitely trying to cope, you know.
And Hitler currently have negative valence, they are derogatory, and with that established, the following coarsely represents the train of thought leading to this usage. Nazi bad. We all agree with that? Okay. You Nazi. You bad. It's a simple process, really. Clearly doesn't require any deep empirical analysis.
Like when you call someone woke. You and your followers have agreed that woke is bad, so you calling someone woke means they're bad and you don't need to listen to their opinion. Got it.
It's grounded on historical political science, which is one of the reasons why the media uses the word constantly. Yeah, who would have thought the media's full of shit? You see, once you take that leap, your historical vision will be irreversibly tainted. The question is flawed to begin with because its basis, namely the expectations and the prism of evaluation, are not in alignment. And on top of that, this has rendered the traditional unidimensional political spectrum increasingly inadequate.
Again, I really do hope he moves on from pretentious fart huffing at some point.
Adequate for capturing the complexity of 20th century political parties. And all of this reflects the ongoing evolution of political taxonomy. So,
it's got nothing to do with 20th century Europe, 21st century understandings or anything like that. But you can just go to what the Nazis said about themselves and what people said about them at that time. Because those people would obviously have understood that political prism, as you want to call it, rather better than we would, because they lived in it, they understood it, they were a part of it. And like they were all saying that they were on the right. So whether you want to say that they're not on the right now because we've shifted so far to the right that they're now on the left, which would be an interesting take for a centrist twat, or a pretend centrist, classical liberal, to say, but like, that's a different thing. They were definitely, for their time, far right. And everyone understood that. Yeah.
So, what do we do now? Well, to answer this correctly, first, we need to ensure objectivity to our analysis. Focus on
I know your content. You can't provide that. You've obviously got this idea that you want to try and portray them as left-wing. So you're not objective. Just saying, I'm Mr. Facts and Logic is irrelevant. Fucking irrelevant.
Attitudes towards private property, individual freedom, and wealth redistribution patterns. If needed,
God, I already know the dumb arguments he's going to make.
Even implementing a mathematical apparatus. Also, we should explore and take into consideration the political allegiances that occurred historically and the sort of opposition to the regime in question, the Nazis. So let's do that. Welcome to our comprehensive qualitative analysis. Some people will use nomenclature as a gotcha moment to place the Nazis within the political spectrum. In other words, Nazism stands for National Socialism, so they were socialists, hence left-wing. Now, nomenclature alone cannot be used as the basis for classification. It's too shallow and unscientific.
I will give him that point. He has not fallen into the very first trap. Well done. Just because they had the word socialism in the name does not make them socialists. I will give you a tick. There's a little tick in the plus column. Well done. You avoided the very first pitfall of the right-wing twat trying to claim the Nazis were left-wing. Awesome. Good for you. You get a nice big happy smiley sticker. We'll wait and see if he falls into the second one.
Scientific as a parameter. This is regardless of whether you think they were left-wing or right-wing. Let me prove it to you. If the name of any given party is the basis of the argument of where they stand within the left-right dichotomy, then is the Communist Party in China Republican in the American sense? I mean, it's the People's Republic of China. Similarly, is the...
Exactly. There you go. The obvious example is that one. The DPRK, not otherwise known as North Korea, it refers to itself as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. It's not democratic, it doesn't stand for the people, and it isn't a republic. It is of Korea, though, to be fair. It is a part of the Korean peninsula. So, 4 of the 5 words... let's say 3 of the 4 words, the proper words, are incorrect.
Democratic People's Republic of Korea, aka North Korea, really democratic? Yeah, didn't think so. And if you really want to break your brain, I made a video not too long ago talking about ancient democracies, such as, for example, Greek democracy, which was a form of pure democracy, and then I compared it to modern democracies and to see what they differed and what areas they had in common. Well, in the comment section of that video, as it happens, my American viewers began a flame war, whereby you had people saying, no, America is a democracy, and other people saying, no, America is a constitutional republic. Right. Well, do you know what Italy is? Well, after the referendum of the second...
A fucking joke?
June 1946, Italy abolished monarchy and became officially, wait for it, una repubblica democratica. That translates as a democratic republic. Yeah, welcome to Europe. You think that's confusing? Well, in the United States, simple liberalism often means social liberalism, and a liberal is a left-winger. But in Europe, simple liberalism often means classical liberalism, which can be a center-right position.
Oh, God. Okay, so he hasn't fallen. He's fallen into the second one. Nomenclature alone isn't enough. But here's some nomenclature, which means that we can just obfuscate and say that the Nazis were left-wing because of something liberalism democracy.
Particularly for those right-wing populist movements that embrace economic policies which in America will be associated with the left, while at the same time promoting cultural and social conservatism. And on that note, since we're talking about what a party named itself, do you want to know what Hitler said when it comes to left or right? Well, Hitler denied that Nazism was either left-wing or right-wing. Instead, he officially portrayed Nazism as a, open quotes, syncretic movement.
Yeah, because he wanted to try and win votes from left-wingers as well. Literally, and they'll do this, right? You know that the Nazi flag has a large amount of red as a colour. I literally heard conservatives say the Nazis were left-wing because they had red in their flag, like the communist flag. Even though there is literally a direct quote from Hitler saying, we made our flag red so that we could encourage communists to come to our meetings. Because we wanted to try and, trick communists into appearing at our meetings. Because they wanted more people at their meetings. That's it. They literally waved a red flag at some communist bulls, and that's it. It has nothing to do with being communist. They wanted to make the communists not communist anymore. That's it. Hey, quick question. What colour is associated with the Republican Party? Exactly. The Republicans are communists. Fact. This is your reaction, is it? Nice, nice. Makes sense. I do look a good Prager graph. Beautiful. Beautiful. And, yeah, thank you to... Who the fuck was it? Thank you, Marcel Paul. You French bastard. For resubscribing for 42 months. Legend. Don't forget, everybody, if you're enjoying my chitty chats, my kitty cats, you can subscribe. You can do bits messages, $200. Well, you can do $200 because it's 200 bits or more, but we'll get you a text-to-speech. You can do super chats while the Streamlabs link below. $2 get you a free... Get you a text-to-speech. If you're on YouTube, you can become a member for as little as 99 pence. You can gift memberships to the community, and you can do bits messages that I will read out.
Yeah, let's ditch the whole name argument, shall we? So what do I propose as an alternative? Well, personally, I think that the best way to define Nazism is a totalitarian dictatorship. That's going to be our basic core.
Right, but that doesn't tell us anything about a political positioning, because you can have a leftist authoritarian dictatorship, which some people would argue is an oxymoron, but I think in practice isn't necessarily the case. I think some people have a far too rosy picture of what leftism is, and will happily exclude anything that they think isn't quite perfect, and that's not how humans work. So you can have a leftist authoritarian dictatorship, you can have a rightist one, you can have a centrist one, although that does seem a bit weird. So this, I'm just saying it's an authoritarian dictatorship is irrelevant at best and obfuscation at worst.
Definition to identify what we are talking about, instead of using the American left-right spectrum. Then, after having established firmly what Nazism is, we can then look at the policies one by one and decide from an American contemporary perspective which of these lean right and which lean left.
Hang on, time out, Homeslice. You already said that it's not fair to judge 20th century European political questions by 21st century American perspectives. So why are you now explicitly saying you are going to judge a party from the 30s and 40s by the standard of people of the 2020s in America? That doesn't... You've literally already said that doesn't work. Fucking hell.
Based on their salience. Alright, that sounds good on paper, but let's try if it works. What defines totalitarianism? Centralized authority, strength in the military, militarism with resources directed to domestic population, authoritarianism and dictatorial rule, repression of freedom of speech and freedom of the press, systematic elimination of political opposition by violence, expansionistic foreign policies, and conquest through military might.
Not necessarily. I don't know that I agree with that last point. It often is accompanied by that, but I don't think that has to be a part of it. I think that's an unnecessary addition that you've made there. That's not a core part of what... You can be an authoritarian and a dictator without seeking any external expansion whatsoever. And in smaller countries that know they realistically can't do that, that's often the way it works out. They won't try and expand because they know they'll just get destroyed. Now, if they're powerful enough to expand, they often will. Yeah, Franco didn't do any... If Franco had wanted, Franco could have invaded Gibraltar during the Second World War, but he didn't. That's not to say that Franco was a good dude. He just feared the repercussions. But he could have done it, and realistically, I'm not entirely sure Britain could have stopped it. But he didn't. That doesn't make him not an authoritarian dictator. He was both of those things.
Already note that all three historical totalitarian regimes of the 20th century fit very neatly within this box. German Nazism, Italian fascism, and Soviet communism. In other words, when we examine the practical manifestations of these 20th century regimes, striking similarities emerge. For instance, the lack of individualism and individual freedom. Benito Mussolini himself publicly stated that fascism is anti-individualistic and accepts the individual only in as far as the interests coincide with those of the state. Well, yeah, but then again, communism, fascism, and Nazism might be considered quite different when it comes to their core ideology. So Metatron, are you really sure that they would fit each and every single one of these? Okay, let me prove it to you. Number one, centralized authority. Absolutely, all three. Strength in the military. Do I even need to comment that? Militarism with resources directed to domestic...
I would argue that was only the case in the Soviet Union and the build-up to the Second World War. You'll notice during the 5-year plans, there wasn't a massive production of military strength. Even though there was a vast expansion of industrial output, that wasn't focused on building up the military. The production of the military, and indeed nationalism within that, during the early parts of the Second World War forward, was due to external threat. Now, you know I'm no fan of the Soviet Union. I'm not saying this to defend them. I just think this is an accurate reading of the situation. Yeah, they weren't inherently militaristic in that sense. They became militaristic due to, you know, the Nazis invading and shit. Just saying.
Domestic population, but in the case of the Nazi, of course, that meant the Jews, and it meant gypsies, and every single person that opposed the Nazi regime. But when it comes to Stalin, well, he murdered more of his own people than he did of his foreign enemies.
So? What's that got to do with anything? He wasn't targeting people because of some racial inferiority. Extreme sense. But by the way, I don't mean to say that so glibly, like he killed millions of fucking people, he's an evil monster. I just meant in terms of the point he's making here, the argument he's putting forward, it doesn't fucking mean anything. Centrist extremists. We will crush you, the opponents of incremental reform, under our boots. True.
Just putting it out there. Authoritarianism and dictatorial rule, repression of freedom of speech. But what about the freedom of speech part? And I will show, well, let me prove it to you. Let's do a little thought exercise. You are in 1940s Germany. You disagree with Adolf Hitler's opinions, so you go to Berlin, and in front of the whatever government building that they have there, you say, Hitler was an idiot. Yeah. Do you think you're going to survive that?
In front of whatever government building they have there? Could you not do any research? Like, it's sloppy. No, because he was going on, he did all of that, like, pretentious guff at the start about doing quantitative and qualitative and blah, blah, blah. Like, we're doing spatial and fucking temporal and all this shit. And he's like, whatever government building they have there. Just say Reichstag. It technically wouldn't actually be correct in this particular instance because the Reichstag stopped operating as the head of the German the meeting place for the German government in like 1941, I think it was. So realistically speaking, it wouldn't be there. But if you did do it there, you would also still probably be arrested. But regardless of that, you could have just done some fucking research and found out the name of a government building in the place, even if you didn't know Reichstag.
And into the concentration camps you go. But what about Italian fascism? Well, you go to Rome and you state right in the main plaza, Benito Mussolini was an absolute moron. And there you go, dead in the prison. Well, you probably die before you even reach the prison, but if you do reach the prison, you'll die in there. And what?
Can we get some 707s in chat?
Once again, let's teleport you to Soviet Russia. You are in front of the Kremlin and you say, Stalin, who is a monster. Gulag, immediate, no freedom of speech. In fact, freedom of speech is the first thing that goes when it comes to totalitarianism. I might make a dedicated video to that. If you appreciate my content...
I mean, he's not necessarily wrong, but like, also I don't, like, it doesn't advance any argument here to say they were all authoritarians. Yes, we know. Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin were authoritarian. But the question in the fucking thing is, were the Nazis authoritarian or not? It's, were they left-wing or right-wing? So just saying they're authoritarian does nothing. It takes us no further in this discussion whatsoever. By the way, it's pronounced Reichstag, not Reichstag. Nothing to do with Bambi, despite feelings. Oh, shut the fuck up. You're lucky we let you keep speaking German. Alright? It's a weird and gross language. We should have made you speak Dutch. It would have been fucking hilarious.
So what this tells us is that these are not necessarily unique features of the right or the left, but they manifest as common ground on the extremes of said spectrum. It's the horseshoe effect. Extreme stuff, even if... I
literally called it. Oh, I promise you I didn't pre-watch. I knew he was going to go fucking horseshoe theory. The communists and the fascists were just exactly the same. Oh, God. Also, dickhead. if you're going to pray in aid, horseshoe theory, what you are immediately accepting is that fascism is far right. Look at the fucking picture, you dopey cunt. It literally has fascism on the right of that. So even if you're saying the two extremes loop around and are close together, you're still saying that fascism is on the far right. That's literally what that fucking picture is telling me. Fucking idiot. Just an idiot. A genuine idiot.
Ideologically, when compared with communism, fascism is indeed right-wing. You have authoritarian control. Both Hitler and Stalin established it. It was absolute, centralized power. Propaganda and information control.
I wonder if this image... Oh, God. Hang on. No. That's definitely not what I was asking to happen. Hang on. This image, the kind of... Is it just me that's sensing a kind of sexual tension here? You look at these two images, and these two people, these two figures. There's a battle for control. One of them has to be the top, one of them has to be the bottom, and the two tops are battling like fuck here. And okay, I don't want to know. Is there fanfic of these two creatures? I don't want to know that. Well, I don't want to see that, but I want to know if there is, but I don't want to see it. Like, I'm just saying. I think it would be interesting. What the fuck? The inherent homoeroticism of killing your enemy and immediately regretting it. It's about rage, it's about obsession, it's about making the two-person war your entire raison d'etre. It's about loving and mistaking it for hatred and loving to the point of destruction. His or yours, it doesn't matter, and you think seeing him dead at your feet will make you feel better, but all you feel is a whole lot of nothing. That is a very weird and poignant thing you've sent me, and I don't know why you sent it to me. But thank you, Fogel, nonetheless. It's beautiful and mental. Yes, there is. I just looked. Don't look. Don't type in fucking Hitler Stalin fanfic. Okay. Is there, callback joke, is there Hitler Stalin tasteful yiff? Now I'm genuinely quite interested to see how far this rabbit hole goes. Rabbits is probably one of their personas, I imagine. Oh no, I'm not clicking on that 255. Don't post that, for fuck's sake.
Hitler and Stalin established it. It was absolute, centralized power. Propaganda and information control. I mean, the Nazis were quite famous for burning books, and a lot of those books were in fact communist books and socialist books, by the way. Terror and repression. Yeah. And yes, mass executions were common on all of these regimes.
Right. But it was largely the left that were purged by the Nazis. And then obviously there was Jewish people and Roma and gypsies, whatever, political dissidents and stuff. But like, the Niemeyer poem starts with, first they came for the communists. And I did not speak up because I was not a communist. Why did they go after, if they were anything other than the far right, why were communists their first target? Can anyone answer me that? Starter for 500. Have at it.
Now, in Europe, conventionally, Nazism is generally considered to be a far-right ideology, also due to their...
Yeah, because, well, due to the fact that they are right-wing. Also, why is he not reading the one newspaper from this time period that we enjoy? Hitler Dude, what new? Come on now.
allegiances with the fascists in Italy and their countering of Stalin and communism, which is, of course, a left-wing extreme ideology. 22nd of June 1941 and the invasion of the Soviet Union should stand as a clear definition of that. Besides, under Hitler, the newspapers of the Social Democratic parties are banned, functionaries are arrested, and whatnot. But once you start to look at this from the American political perspective, then the situation becomes muddy, if you will, necessitating a more nuanced item-by-item approach. You see, the Nazis, for example, had nationalized healthcare. Government was...
Ooh, they had nationalised healthcare. Yeah, loads of fascist governments have nationalised healthcare. Because you can, indeed, look at nationalised healthcare not as some sort of neoliberal, like, ooh, evil thing. You can actually look at it as a patriotic thing. You can literally look at nationalising your healthcare system as keeping the nation strong. So it's perfectly congruent with Nazism to have nationalised healthcare. Not inherent within it. You can absolutely be a Nazi and not believe in public healthcare. It's very much an optional extra, but it's not precluded by, I should say, Nazism. This is not evidence of them being left-wing. Fucking hell.
Deeply involved in every aspect of industry, so we're talking about big government. The Nazis were not...
Right, but up until the 1980s, you daft cunt, right? You fucking Reaganite brainworm scum, right? The government were not seen as the enemy of everything. Capitalists wanted the government involved. In fact, they still do. They just lie about it now. They wanted the government to regulate things so that they could continue making efficient, normal, regulated profits. That's it. It wasn't until the Reaganite, Thatcherite economic reforms of the 1980s. In some cases in the 1970s, they were tried in places like Chile or whatever, but it's, you know, just having some government intervention in the economy doesn't make you left-wing. Virtually every conservative in the history of the fucking world believed in government control of the system. On some level. Oh no, it's not about left versus right, it's about authoritarian versus libertarian. I am smart.
Not in favor of free market capitalists. And yes, I'll defend this one in the next section. And all of
Can't
this
wait.
sounds left of center to an American. So, it is mixed. On the following section, I'm going to present the characteristics of the regime, and then you decide.
See, the communist gay agenda summed up in one image. People will say this is just an image of friendship and solidarity between Soviet Union and communist Russia, but actually what it is a gay, interracial couple with their children, who are probably also gay and interracial, let's be honest. That's how communists get down, isn't it? So, just saying.
Where it leans the most towards. This way, we can promote critical thinking. Now, Nazism was characterized by extreme nationalism, state-funded welfare programs. If there were any...
State-funded welfare programs. Was that state-funded welfare programs for all people? Were these universally applied state-funded welfare programs? Or were they just for good Aryans? Because that's not really a left-wing thing, is it, at that point? Once you start excluding people based on race, or gender, or perceived social utility. It's not very left-wing at that point, is it, mate?
Form of identity politics similar to contemporary political discourse.
They did racial politics just like the NAACP. Therefore, the NAACP and Nazis are just the same thing. You wokeists are the real racists. Yeah, okay, mate. I see who the fuck you are, you cunt.
Of course, the Nazis would have been against it, but so would have been the communists. They had state control of industries, support for a strong military, and as we said, repression of freedom of speech. All right.
Again, all I will say is that the Soviet Union only stood for a strong military in the build-up to and then during the Second World War. And then I suppose after, because of the Cold War. But essentially, it was external threat that forced that situation. I'm not saying it wasn't then used by authoritarian, corrupt scum within their country. But you'll notice when there wasn't a massive external threat, they didn't keep a massive military. Or not. Let's say they didn't massively fund the military that they did have. Which is why they did so poorly at the start of that war, for instance. Or indeed why they did so poorly in the Winter War against Finland. Because they hadn't invested enormously in their military. Because they weren't fascists. It's not the same thing. I know you need everyone to believe it's the same thing, but it isn't.
Okay, now let's jump into the economic policies. A central idea of communist ideology was opposition to private ownership of the means of production, which blended with economic intervention within the private and public sectors. Now, to that, Nazism was different up to a certain extent.
Okay, I'm going to be interested to see how he tries to make literally inventing the concept of privatization. Literally, by the way, look into it. How he makes that into a left-wing thing, I think. I am genuinely excited about that.
Let me clarify. Their overall economic approach favored big business and opposed labor unions, which of course doesn't make...
Can we all just have a golf clap for the use of passive voice there? Opposed labour unions. They were just not massively in favour of labour unions. It's not that they literally made them all illegal the second they got the opportunity and then imprisoned people and murdered them en masse. They just weren't in favour. They were not positively predisposed to labour unions. That's all. That's all that happened there. Fucking evil little shit. Jesus.
It sounds socialist by any means, but we also have to remember a very important factor to this. In Hitler's
Sorry, not passive voice, just underplaying, underselling. Yeah.
speeches from 1920s, he clearly established his idea of what National Socialism was going to be. And mind you, it was only for Germans. And as he outlined his party program, he stated, open quote, that nationalization appears to me to be wrong, close quote. So, at least in the 1930s, he was sort of in favor of the idea of maintaining private property. But was he? Well, I do have an opinion on that, but let me quote a sociologist and economist of the period. Check this out. Friedrich Pollock says, open quote, I agree that the legal institution of private ownership was maintained and that many attributes characteristic for National Socialism begin to manifest themselves, albeit still vaguely in non-totalitarian countries. But does this mean that the function of private ownership did not change? I believe it reaches far more deeply and should be described as the destruction of all the essential traits of private ownership. And I would like to underline that this specific economist saying the private ownership actually wasn't a thing is left-wing. He was a left-wing economist.
How can you say that when left-wing and right-wing can't be applied? Insert fart-huffing nonsense from earlier. Like, my man, yeah, the way in which private ownership was done in Nazi Germany was changed because there was that racialized aspect to it. And so they didn't want formerly Jewish-owned businesses to continue being Jewish-owned businesses, for instance. So yes, in the absolutist free market bullshit land of the Reagan-Thatcher era, which we still live in, you wouldn't say that they were pro-free markets or pro-free ownership of the means of production in the same way that we would now understand absolutist laissez-faire capitalism. But that doesn't mean that they're not capitalists. They're just slightly different capitalists to the ones you are. And, by the way, they were pretty similar capitalists to the way in which capitalists had always been. It's only very recently that the idea of government intervention in capitalism became the big bad boogeyman of, like, you know, I'm the government and I'm here to help. The 9 worst words in the English language. Honestly, if Ronald Reagan isn't being tortured in hell, there is no justice. There is no justice. So yeah, they were capitalists. They were right-wingers, my dude. They just were. Just because they weren't doing capitalism in quite the way you want it to be done, I don't care. I don't.
Moreover, in 1934, Hitler clearly established the fact that to him, wealth was for the national social state, not for the individual. And yes, the individual could enjoy some of that wealth, but it's thanks to the state. And in 1942...
Right, but rather than just random bits of quotes from Hitler, why don't you analyse what actually took place? Why don't you analyse the actual economic policies? Because so far you said, well, this sociologist said a thing and Hitler said a thing. Okay, but what actually happened? Owners of private enterprise, excluding the ones that were from racially hated minorities, so Jewish people, things like that, right? The vast majority, and by the way, what happened then was that they would then privatise those industries by selling them off cheap to rich people. Cal Surprise, I know, it's almost like they were conservatives or something. Crazy. Anyway. The Nazi Party instituted economic policies which made very rich people very rich. If you watch Schindler's List, for instance, or indeed read the fantastic book it's based upon by Thomas Keneally, called Schindler's Ark originally, although they changed it to Schindler's List to like tie in with the movie, which makes, you know, sense from like selling books perspective. Anyway, there's a reason that a lot of people, even from outside of Germany, flocked to Germany during the early part of the Nazi regime. It's because they knew they could make a lot of money. This was not an era, as long as you got along, as long as you didn't oppose the government, you could make a fortune. And indeed Schindler did. Now, thankfully, he spent it all trying to save Jewish people at the end, which is the point of the film, right? And the reason that he's remembered positively, rather than as, you know, a war criminal, which he technically was. But anyway, yeah, lots of people flocked to the Nazi regime because they could make a lot of money. And they did. They made huge amounts of money. I can only imagine it must be billions and billions of dollars in Swiss bank accounts of looted Nazi gold. Not just stolen in the sense that it was like stolen directly from Jewish people and taken to the... But like it was earned through slave labour. It was earned through Nazi reappropriation of property that they then sold on to private industry. Private property and private capital boomed in the early years of the Nazi regime. They were like capitalism on steroids. Not free market laissez-faire capitalism. They were capitalism supercharged. That's what they did. They were uber capitalists. I know you don't like to think that because you think that capitalism is just a free exchange of goods and services between two consenting parties. No, bollocks. That's never been the definition of capitalism, and it never will. Because in that case, the exchange of turnips for a cow is also capitalism, and yet that predates capitalism, and indeed, basically almost civilization. Which would render all definitions meaningless.
When he was in power, he stated, open quotes, the land was national property, and in the end, it's only given to the individual as a loan. Does that sound like private property to you? There is more to it. In 19...
You actually are ridiculous, aren't you? You actually are backward. Unbelievable. Okay, I just walked into my living room as my dad was talking about losing his virginity, so we finally had sex and a bit of blood. Oh, Jesus Christ, 255. That is grotesque.
1937, Hitler had already established the fact that he would demand private industries to produce something that the state defined as being necessary. And they had two options. They either do it, which is great, or they don't, in which case the state will take control of that specific industry sector. It's not big government, that's massive government. Alright, but if...
Yes, you already outlined that they're authoritarian. Also, war economy is a thing that predates capitalism. And will live long beyond it, I'm sure. Governments taking control of sectors of the economy on the basis of need for armed services has always been a thing. That's never not been a thing. It's not exclusive to capitalism or communism or the 20th century or anything. Again, what you're bringing up is essentially fucking irrelevant. Your definition of the right as only being free market capitalism is ridiculous. It's absurd. For a start off, the soft right believe in, at the very least, some minor government role within, curtailing the worst excesses of capitalism to some extent. Very, very piss poor and weak ones, not effective in any way whatsoever, but they do believe in them. Some conservatives believe that parts of the economy should be tuned towards a war footing to defend yourselves. The government should spend money building a wall at the southern border, for instance. Or at least outsourcing that to a private company to do it. But either way, you're spending public money on a necessity, whatever. And the far right believe that the entire state should be run for the betterment of X group of people. It's only a very relatively small slither of the right that believe in like absolute laissez-faire libertarian fantasyland bullshit. And that does appear to be where you're at. And that's very sad.
If that's the case, if this is what Hitler believed, and by the way this is confirmed by SS letters even all the way up to 1944 that was exactly his position, and we can see in the way he acted. But if that was the case, then why did he not say private property is abolished? I mean, the Soviets did it. Why did he say no, private property is still a thing? Well, he said
because he was a capitalist.
That because it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter that legally there was still a definition for private property as long as what he gets is what he gets. And besides, of course, he understood that in a moment of war, you can't fight outside and also fight inside with the private sector. So he made the statement, private property stays, but then they control all of it, including demand.
They did well. They didn't control all of it, did they? Why was it we would have regular meetings with business leaders and ask them to do X, Y, and Z thing, and there would be a negotiation and a back and forth? You realise, like, you've gone from being pretentious fart huffy to not doing enough nuanced analysis at all. It wasn't quite the command economy you seem to think it was. The huge business interests would regularly butt heads with the government. And there would need to be a negotiated way forward through that. Hitler wasn't all-powerful. He was an authoritarian, he was a dictator, but he wasn't absolutely all-powerful. In terms of economic production and output, you need to look to other people as well, because you've got to bear in mind, as the leader of the government, he wasn't just dealing with economic production. You got to look at people like Albert Speer, for instance, who was an absolutely, if you ignore the morality of it for a second and just look at it as a purely ergonomic thing, was a genuinely brilliant administrator who got enormous amounts of resources very efficiently out of a system that was fucked, especially during the war. Now, if you put the morality back in and say that he used huge amounts of slave labour to do it and never really gave a fuck and should have been fucking executed at the end of the war, that makes it a rather different affair. But anyway, the point being, Hitler didn't just say we need to build tanks and we need to build 600 million tanks, whatever, just make up a number, right? And then it just happened. That's not how any of these systems operate. And by the way, Stalin, for the most part, didn't quite do that either, although he did have a more direct demand economy. Again, it's far more nuanced and complicated than you are admitting here, which is odd, because your entire fucking premise is that it's far too complicated and nuanced to put any kind of label on them. So you'd think you'd use this as an example, but no. Very strange.
Production, means of production.
Also, can I just ask, it's not that big a deal, right? But that wire that's hanging over the live on air sign is really annoying, and why is that there? It would be a lovely little addition to your background if not for the fact that there's this fucking wire there. It's very annoying.
Prices everything. The government tells you what to produce, who to buy from, and what prices you sell. In other words, at least from an economic standpoint, in the discussion of private property.
By the way, no, that didn't happen in Nazi Germany. They didn't tell you where to buy things. There were still supermarkets and stuff, you dopey bastard. Even right up to the end, there were different types of stores. You didn't get told where to buy things from. There wasn't a government store. There were private businesses everywhere. At least ones that could still operate given the, restrictions based on, actual things to sell. Because at the end of the war, people were fucking starving. But there were still private stores in Germany, right to the very end of Nazism.
Property, this was socialism disguised as capitalism.
No, it fucking wasn't. The private businesses ran to the very end. This was not socialism disguised as capitalism. You're a fucking idiot. I told you he was doing this, didn't I? It's corporatism, not real capitalism. It's the same tired, useless, banal nonsense that fucking conservative / libertarian / ANCAP douchebags have been pushing for 25 years. It's very, very boring. Please stop.
Now, of course, when you compare it to the Soviet Union, that had a complete centrally planned economy, this doesn't sound...
Which, bizarrely, was capitalism disguised as socialism. But he's not even going to raise that point. What are you going to do?
As extreme, but then again, the Soviets had a main goal, which was to increase the military power of the state.
No, they didn't. No, they fucking didn't. Okay? During the 5-year plans, and trust me, I studied these in ludicrous detail at university, and indeed at sixth form, but mainly at university. The military was not at all a focus. In fact, it received scant investment. For those who don't know, before the Second World War, so in the 1920s and early 1930s, they had a series of things called the 5-year plans. Stalin and the Politburo would put together a 5-year plan, which was based on massively accelerating the industrialization of the Soviet Union, which was at the start of the Soviet Union, so 1917 or 1921, whenever it was, officially founded. They were incredibly backward. They were basically a rural, semi-peasant economy. It was a fucking absolute nightmare. It was, the rest of the world was booming with economic activity, and Russia was being left behind enormously. So they came up with these things called the 5-year plans, which were literally set targets for you need to produce X amount of things. You need to build new factories, you need to do this, that and the other. You need to massively drive up the efficiency of farmland to feed these new urban workers. Indeed, they even built new cities like Magnitogorsk, was a city that didn't exist, and then they made it as this huge industrial concern. It was enormously effective. Anyway, during that, 2 main things were ignored. Consumer produce, which meant quality of life, wasn't keeping a pace with economic growth, and the military was not put on a war footing, even though it was clear and obvious that a war was coming. And they would pay for that down the line. Anyway. That, in peace, when they thought they didn't need military spending, they didn't spend on the military. Their overall goal was not to increase the military power of the state. What you just said there, Mr. Metatron, was a fucking lie. One that I'm not even sure you're aware of, because you don't seem to be well informed about this at all. I think this is ignorance on your part. Although ignorance is a thing you do know about, and so therefore the fact that you don't know, or sorry, you do know that you don't know, means you shouldn't fucking say it. Because it's a lie.
Familiar? Alright, now I would like to dedicate a small section to race, because of course this...
Amazing, can't wait. Can't wait, I'm tingling. My balls are fizzing at the thought. We can see the scant investment in the military now in Ukraine compared to the old shit of the USA used in the USSR. Phantom of Black, let's not use the modern day as an example, because that's based on something much more different. I'm mentioning specifically in the build-up to the Second World War, so in the same time period that Hitler and Mussolini were, alive and operating as leaders, because that's the point we're talking about here. After the Second World War, actually in the lead up to and then the Second World War and after, they were interested in investing in the military because of the Cold War, right? So they did invest. The reason that the situation in Ukraine is so bad is because the economic situation in the Soviet Union from the end of the Brezhnev era, which was economic stagnation and then decline through the 70s and 80s, was so bad that they basically weren't investing at all in anything, really. And then, of course, you have the political, economic devastation of shock therapy, which has hollowed out huge chunks of Eastern Europe, basically. And that's why Ukraine finds itself in this position, which is nothing really to do with the not investing in the Soviet Union's military in the 1920s and 30s. So I don't want to be like too like nitpicky with you there. I just let's keep it to that time frame.
This was not only a connection, so race and racism was a connection to, I want to say, Nazi ideology, but it was also a congenital element within the system. And another thing that the Nazis did was to put the blame of many of society's problems, particularly of the Germans, to immigration. Moreover, apart from the Holocaust, there was clearly a sort of differential treatment under the law, based on your racial affiliation. Now, this is of course real. It happened. And we can see some of these themes, particularly the ultra-nationalistic ones, in modern-day far-right ideologies. With that being said, let's also remember that if you think that racism denotes right-wing position, then you would classify Karl Marx as a right-winger. And the reason I say that is because if you actually read the article he published in 1844 called On the Jewish Question...
Yeah, he was a racist guy, we know. Virtually every person who's ever lived was racist. Also... my man, having talked about how using 21st century definitions to explain 20th century political themes is wrong because things develop and change, why are you now using a 19th century example to try and prove a 20th century example and a 21st century example? Do you not think that's equally, if not more, dishonest on your part? Like... yes, we accept that Karl Marx was racist. And by the way, you can be left-wing and be racist. Because when we talk about left and right, it's so often economics, right? It's so often economics. And yet economics is basically ignored. For instance, even in his section about economics, about policy, he didn't really actually examine any actual policy. He gave vague statements about private property being abolished or something, right? But he didn't actually analyse any of the actual economic policy at all. So you can be a Marxist and a racist. You can be a fascist and a racist. You can be a liberal and a racist. That is true. Being racist doesn't denote your political persuasion at all. It doesn't denote your views on economics or foreign policy or transportation. Like, it's irrelevant in that sense. So just being racist is not the same as being a Nazi. We don't just dislike the Nazis for being racist. It was the fact that they were genocidally racist. Being racist is bad. Murdering 6 million Jewish people is worse. Do you see the difference? Yeah? Okay. What is it, 255/ClemH Fandango? I feel like he doesn't get the government telling companies they have to do some things isn't the same as nationalisation. Yeah, he doesn't understand that. Because he's not analysing this through any kind of economic prism, as I just sort of kind of discussed a second ago. Yeah. He doesn't understand a lot, unfortunately. But he does have pre-existing ideas that he wants to try and establish a bias for, so that's fine. Let's go with it. Let's just allow him to do his thing. To get a better understanding, I read Albert Speer's Inside the Third Reich. It was good PR for Albert. Yeah, whenever reading what Nazis wrote, especially after the war, take into account two big things. Firstly, they're trying to cover their own back, and secondly, they're trying to make it seem not so bad. Because of the first thing.
You would absolutely consider to be racist. And also Marx didn't really like Mexicans, that's another thing that he did, and Friedrich Engels said quite a lot of horrible things about black people too.
Yeah, they existed in the 19th century, my dude. I'm sure they were racist as fuck. That's literally it. That's literally it. He's moved on from race by just saying, Karl Marx was racist. I'm sorry, you spent 5 fucking minutes at the very start of the video of a... hang on, how many minutes is this? 19-minute video and you spent 5 minutes essentially verbally masturbating, using words like spatial and temporal and all of this shit, right? Just wanking yourself into a frenzy about how dialectic you were going to be and how incredibly nuanced and all of this you were going to be. And your section on race is just Karl Marx is racist. Oh my word, what a waste of everyone's fucking time you are. That's the best you can fucking do. Oh. Right. I suppose he had to do this because for all of the faults of the Soviet Union, they weren't really that racist. Not that they weren't racist at all. They certainly were. You could point to, for instance, Stalin's hatred of Polish people as an example. You could point to the way in which the nationalities, those Central Asian stands, were treated as essentially a dumping ground for unwanted peoples in the Soviet Union. You could point to these things and say, look, they're racist as well. But instead you went to Karl Marx, who wasn't alive during the period of time we're talking about, so were irrelevant. And also you didn't analyse the racism of any of the people involved. In fact, you could have pointed out that in some respects Mussolini was less racist than Stalin. You could have pointed that out. I think that would be a bit more of a tricky argument to be having, but an interesting one nonetheless. Because his fascism wasn't really racially motivated. It was more nationally motivated. Clearly, you can argue that the anti-Jewish policies that he put forward later on were done essentially to appease Hitler. He didn't really hate Jewish people. He didn't really hate a lot of people. He hated communists, to be sure, because he was a fascist. He hated trade unionists, etc. Those sorts of things. But he wasn't really that racist, certainly for the time period and political persuasion from which he came. And you haven't analysed any of these things. You haven't analysed a damn thing. You did a section on race that didn't refer to any of the 3 regimes that you brought up at the start. You mentioned Karl fucking Marx, who was dead 60 years before any of this happened. What a fucking waste of time. What a waste of time you are.
Now I would like to talk about an argument that is the one that shocks me the most, and it's the claim that Hitler was a Christian. Now, of course, I'm going to debunk this. I'm going to do it, but...
Well, he was a Christian. He was a Catholic, to be specific. But also, it doesn't matter, because again, you can be a fascist and a Christian. You can be a fascist and an atheist. You can be a fascist in any other religious type of thing. You can be a left-winger or... Yeah, I mean, I've had this argument before within the atheist community. Being an atheist doesn't really denote a lot about you, other than one particular aspect of theistic belief or non-belief, and that's it. I've got much more in common with a socialist who's a socialist because of the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth than I have with a Nazi who doesn't believe in God. And I will ally myself with that theistic socialist over a non-theistic fascist any day of the week. I don't really care about Hitler's beliefs on God, particularly. The actual truth of the matter is that he was a Catholic. He was. And even if we say that he wasn't, somehow, because reasons, virtually every person who fought in the SS, or indeed the Wehrmacht for that matter, every camp guard, virtually, every conductor of a train that took Jewish people to Holocaust, was almost to a man either Catholic or Lutheran. There were some that would have been Eastern Orthodox because of people they picked up locally, but regardless of that, the vast majority of them were Catholic or Lutheran Protestant. Christians. That's the point. So I don't really care what Hitler thinks religiously. It's not particularly worthwhile to me. There are actually better examples of irreligiosity within higher Nazi circles. Various of them seem to be into kind of weird, almost not shamanic, but a sort of weird, almost ancient Aryanism cult thing that they'd made up for themselves. So you could argue they weren't Christian, but they were still religious. But also it doesn't matter. If they'd been hardcore atheists, if they'd been Richard Dawkins, an atheist fascist, boom, take that, Richie. It wouldn't have made any difference. If they, like, I don't care if you're a Christian or not, if you're taking trucks of people to a camp. Your religious beliefs are fucking irrelevant to that situation. Yeah, Himmler and his pagan stuff and all the rest of it. No, not the Anna-Nerba. The Anna-Nerba were an academic group, but although they did have occultist elements, I guess. But no, that's a slightly different thing. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Basically, is the point. Even if you were to somehow prove that Hitler, owned a copy of the God Delusion somehow with time travel, I don't care. It doesn't change my view of him in the slightest.
By, quoting from Hitler's own words with his own letters, and then we're going to look at how he changed his rhetoric before and after he became chancellor and then dictator. But before we do all of that, let me just say this. Do you really...
Yeah, and they did have Gott mit uns on the belt buckles and stuff. Yeah, like the religiosity was built into the Nazi system.
I think that...
But again, it wouldn't have made any difference if they'd had God isn't with us. I don't know what that would be. God nicht uns or whatever, I don't know. It wouldn't change anything. I don't care.
The leader of the most anti-Semitic regime the world has ever seen would have worshipped Jesus of Nazareth. Now, given...
He didn't just do that. Tell me he didn't just do that. Tell me he didn't just fucking say that. I can't be anti-Semitic. Some of my best messiahs are Jews. You're a lunatic. You're a fucking idiot. Okay, right. You know the Crusaders, my man? You know the Crusaders, right? They went into Jerusalem and they slaughtered all Muslims and... Well, not all, but the vast majority of Muslims and Jewish people in the town. You know that happened. And you know they were Christians fighting for Jesus of Nazareth. At least in their eyes. You know, most of the most virulent, disgusting, bigoted, genocidal scumfuckery aimed towards Jewish people over the course of the history of, let's say, Christianity onwards. So let's say this side of the BC AD or CE and BCE, whatever, divide, the last 2,000 years. The vast majority of anti-Semitism has been done by Christians. Who support, in theory, and follow, the Jewish guy Jesus of Nazareth. You fucking idiot. You buffoon. You moron. You dolt. You baboon. Yeah, this guy hates nomenclature. Yeah. Fucking hell.
And one of the things that people say when they underline this idea that, well, Hitler was a Christian is that they say that he was baptized as a Catholic. But I'd like to underline that not all Christian religions consider baptism or perform baptism the same way. I mean, differently from, for example, Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, the Catholics baptize you when you are a baby. So it's not like Hitler.
Not technically true all the time. I was baptized when I was 7. I know, strange one. But I was 7 years old when I was baptized. Now, to be fair, most Catholics will be baptised when they're a baby. Fair. But you don't have to be. You can be baptised at any age. Baptism is just like a formal acceptance into the church. They pour water on your head and it's meant to be the cleansing water of Jesus' love and all that bollocks, right? Yeah. No, I wasn't Anglican. I was a Catholic. I was a Catholic altar server. Yeah, a couple of years after that, of course, but yeah. But no, I was always a Catholic. We hadn't been baptised. We never got around to it. And then my dad, when the third child, I'm in the middle of 3, so when the third kid was born and was like 2 or whatever, it was like, we should get them baptized. I think he was religious for like 5 minutes or something. Very strange, man. Anyway, Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. Indeed, was he called John the Baptist because he did the baptizing, or was that nominative determinism? Was he called the Baptist and he went, well, I have to become a Baptist now. I'm called John the Baptist. If you meet someone and you go, oh, I'm John the Baptist, or where do you work? In a bakery. It doesn't make sense, does it? Opportunity missed.
Hitler had any say to it. If that alone, the idea of being baptized within the Catholic Church, is enough for you to say, well, Hitler was a Christian, that
you were not baptized by Reverend Shufflebottom. Shut the fuck up. That's not a real thing. Shut up. Shut up.
Consider Stalin a Christian since he actually went to seminary. He was Orthodox, but still. Hitler's...
Yeah, he was also religious, yeah. So what? Again, religion or lack thereof is irrelevant. By the way, interesting little story here. You know, this was the only time he ever went to Paris, Hitler? Supposedly, although it's difficult to tell at this point, but supposedly he loved like art, or at least what he thought of as art. Old classical shite. So he went to Paris and he was so annoyed that it was better than anything he'd ever created, he just never wanted to go back. Apparently he was fuming on the train ride home about it. So much of fascism is about inadequacy within the self being externalized. It's either sexual inadequacy, being put out there as a kind of, it's like I'm going to build a shield around myself by destroying people, or it's like you don't think you're worthy, and so that inferiority complex, you can either internalize that and become very depressed, or externalize that and make it everyone else's problem. Fascists do the second of those things. Yeah, Stalin became an atheist, but look, he had been a religious man at times. Also, there were still plenty of people within the Soviet Union who were religious. And were good communists too. They didn't like this. The weird state atheism thing. It was such an own goal. They didn't need to do. Like, you can say we don't have religion in the state, as in like we don't put forward any kind of religion. We don't respect any one religion over anything else, but still allow people to practice. It's ridiculous. You have this situation where people in the Soviet Union, at some points in the Central Asian Stan countries where lots of Muslims lived, they stopped people being able to read Arabic so that they couldn't read the Quran. The fuck's that about? You think that's going to endear people to your state? I'm surprised it lasted as long as it fucking did. Fucking joke. Anyway.
His real intent towards the church was eroding the core doctrines of the Christian religion until there was virtually nothing left of its original function, in order to slowly substitute it with a puppet used for social control, which would also have followed with the confiscation of all the places of worship, something actually quite similar to what is happening today in China. So that alone doesn't really make me feel confident about, Hitler's Christian beliefs. Oh, and the fact that he shot quite a lot of Polish priests dead. There is that. You see, during the beginning of his political...
Yeah, but it's because they were Polish and part of the intelligentsia. It wasn't specifically because he hated Christians, because he didn't really. He also cut a deal with the Catholic Church. Like, if you were to actually analyse the religiosity of the various regimes, you could do that. People have. People have done really good work in this. They literally cut a deal with the Vatican. Which is why we even have the Vatican City as the Holy See, as an independent foreign country. Albeit one so small that it shouldn't be a foreign country. It's a couple of city blocks. It's a joke, right? But it exists. At least in part because of a deal that was done between the various fascist powers of Central Europe and the papacy. You can argue that the religiosity of certain Muslim groups in the Middle East and their compliance with, or no, I don't want to say, well, yeah, collaboration. Their collaboration with the Nazi regime, and their willingness to pull certain other groups with them, or certain other groups of people with them, to effectively help the Nazi regime or the fascist coalition in places like North Africa. You could express this, and you could put forward the argument about this, but you're not trying to do honest analysis of the situation. You're just trying to say, well, Hitler personally probably wasn't that religious, so actually he's left-wing, which is just dishonest and a fucking betrayal of the very religious people you claim to be, or that you think that you're supporting in this endeavour. Because just distancing yourself, or just distancing Hitler from religiosity on a personal level, does nothing to distance the Catholic Church and its complicity with the Nazi regime. It does nothing to remove the heinous crimes of Christians across Europe, North Africa and the Middle East. It does nothing to absolve the at least passive compliance or active collaboration of Muslim groups in places like the Middle East and North Africa for their involvement in crimes. So religiosity doesn't come out of this looking good, but again, it wouldn't really matter, because if all of those people had been atheists, their crime would still have been just as fucking heinous. But you're not trying to do, like, interesting, thoughtful critique of a situation. You're just trying to make Hitler seem vaguely left-wing because he was an atheist in your eyes? The fuck is wrong with you?
Korea, Hitler publicly expressed favorable opinions towards traditional Christian ideas. That's true, but later he abandoned them. Okay. Most historians agree that he was adverse.
What's this? Oh, God. Christopher Hitchens.
Moving to Marxism, moving to Leninism. Okay. In Russia, in 1917, for hundreds of years, millions of people have been told the head of the state is a supernatural power. The Tsar is not just the head of the government, not just a king, but he stands between heaven and earth. And this has been inculcated in generations of Russians for hundreds of years. If you're Joseph Stalin, himself a seminarian from Georgia, you shouldn't be in the totalitarianism business if you can't exploit a ready-made reservoir of credulity and servility that's as big as that. It's just waiting for you to capitalize on. So what do? Well, we'll have an inquisition for one thing. We'll have miracles for another. Lysenko's biology will produce 4 harvests a year. We'll have heresy hunts. We'll tell everyone they must be grateful only to the leader for what they get, and they must thank him and praise him all the time. And that they must be aware all the time of the existence of the counter-revolutionary devil who waits to... You see where I'm going with this?
Okay.
That's not secularism. Michael?
It certainly wasn't secular, no, it was atheistic, yeah. In the sense that it was like enforced, silly atheism, yeah. But still, yeah, yeah.
Oh, do I need really 2? Okay. I'll tell you my North Korea stories another time. It's surrogate. It is at the very best and the very worst. The examples I've been talking about are a surrogate for messianism, for the belief in ultimate history and the end of days and the conclusion of all things, which is, I've tried to argue, I hope with some success, the problem to begin with, the replacement of reason by faith, the discarding of the one thing that makes us important and useful and different from other primates in favor of something that requires no evidence and just requires incantation. Not good for you. If Dr. McGrath or anyone else could come up with an example of a society which had fallen into slavery and bankruptcy and beggary and terror and misery because it had adopted the teachings and the precepts of Spinoza and Einstein and Pierre Bayle and Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine, then I'd be impressed, and that would be a fair test on a level playing field. But you will find no such example. Indeed, the nearest such example we do have is these great United States, the first country in the world to have a constitution that forbids the mention of religion in the public square.
I was just about to sort of nip in and say, well, the United States was founded on the words of Thomas Jefferson, and they did do slavery. So, like, I don't think it's as simple as that.
Except by way of limiting it and saying that the state can take no interest in establishment of faith. Best known under the rubric of the wall of separation, my new slogan is, Mr. Jefferson, build up that wall. Hope you'll join me in it.
Right. Okay, I mean, he wasn't wrong there, but still. Do I like? I don't particularly like Crystal Hitchens. No. But there you go.
Failure towards organized Christianity. Oh, and he also criticized atheism, so he had a bone to pick with everyone. Now, if you examine some of his early talks, you'll see that he considered himself as a German Christian. He said, I'm not a Catholic, I'm a German Christian, and even a member of positive Christianity. Not member, but like a supporter of positive.
And you wouldn't mind, but he wasn't even German, he was Austrian. Which is like scuffed German. And I'm doing that joke just for Fogel.
Christianity. But you see, positive Christianity is not even Christianity, as they rejected fundamental core doctrines of Christianity, such as the, divinity of Jesus. So, yeah, not Christians. And when it comes to German Christians, it was a type of Protestant church or group that supported Nazi ideologies. That's why he said that. Thus, in Hitler's eyes, Hitler detested Christian ethics. He said it was fit for slaves. And in...
Yeah, because it is. It literally is. You refer to yourselves as a flock. Thank you, Fogel, for gifting a sub after I just basically called you shit Germans. Brilliant. You have been baited. Well and truly. Much love. Anyway, what was I saying? No, yeah, Christian or religiosity in general, referring to yourself as a flock, as sheep that need to be herded. Yeah, it's absolute fucking peasant mentality bullshit. Yes, it is. Now, that's not to destroy or to attack the religiosity of individuals or whatever, because there are plenty of people who go along, who are believers in a god or set of gods that don't have that particular thing. But when he talks about Christian ethics, he does mean that. When he talks about Christian ethics, he means that kind of servile mentality. Yeah. So it is fit for slaves. Like, well done on bringing up a Hitler quote that was correct for once. The stopped clock is right 2 times a day, no matter who the stopped clock is, apparently.
1937, he publicly said that the Christian church or Christianity was ripe for destruction, and that doesn't sound like a Christian to me. So the idea that...
That's really odd, because that doesn't imply anything about his belief in God, or indeed his adherence to the church. Saying it's ripe for destruction could just mean it's weak and needs to bolster itself. It could be a warning as much as a threat. Surely. You've not given us the quote for that. Given us the context for that quote. Jesus Christ, this is awful.
That Hitler was a Christian is nonsense, and his ostentatious hatred towards Christianity wouldn't really work or go very well with, say, modern-day faith and flag right-wing Americans. With all being said,
so
as
what?
you can see, there are many aspects to this. Yes, some of his policies were in fact right-wing, others would have been left-wing. If you were to take like one of those quizzes online, what you could do is try with your own, with your own understanding of these, you could try it and answer. Like every time you get a question, you could ask a question.
Having given us all that fucking guff at the start, all that bollocks about how investigative and fucking awesome and brilliant you were going to be, your analysis at the end is go to one of those obviously ineffective, obviously inaccurate shithouse internet fucking Foursquare political meme things, right? And put in Hitler's beliefs and see where it... Why would you take the results of that as if that means anything? Fucking hell. Guy's a twat.
And what would Hitler respond to that and try to do it? And you'll see that sometimes you'll go right, sometimes you go left. Therefore, Nazism should not be judged by whatever words Hitler crafted, and it should not be considered neither left nor right wing.
It should be considered right wing because it was.
At least in the political sense. The only thing in which Hitler believed was accumulating personal power. And we have a name for that: totalitarianism. Thank you for watching.
Absolute waste of fucking time. I apologise to everyone. I'm genuinely sorry. Although I'm not sorry for putting that on the screen, because that's amazing. Anyway, I'm going to fuck off, I reckon. Apologies that again that Christy couldn't be here. things are what they are. Hopefully she'll be back on Friday. Yes. This was, yeah, like I say, a waste of time. I'm sorry that I did this to you. I'm sorry. I'll be back probably tomorrow, I think. Although, I don't know. I don't have absolutely firmed plans. Yeah, your smile specifically. Yes. Let's go on to... Hang on a minute, where are we? Because I keep forgetting to do this on YouTube, right? Let's find somewhere to send people on the YouTubes. Redirect. That's where we want to go. Who is live? No Justice MTG is live. So go and say hello to her. Boom. And let's find. Well, presumably they're going on Twitch as well. So I'll send you over there as well. Go and say hello to Helena, who is talking about the Labour Party conference, because obviously. And like I say, I'll be back probably tomorrow. Thank you everyone for your amazing support. I love you dearly. At least this time Kev's apologising instead of gleeful. True. What are Helena's pronouns? She, her, I think. Yeah. Stay beautiful, yeah? No pass around.